Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast Mayday, what's your location? Get the panel out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5 inch line. To the rope, to the rope, to the rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we examine line and duty deaths of firefighters from official reports to share and learn from these tragic incidents to potentially prevent them from recurring. I want to welcome our hosts joining me. I'm Paul, and I'm joined by Denis from Nova Scotia. Hello, Denis. How you doing?
Hi, Paul. Hi, Dennis. How are things? Well, little break in the weather. It's looking a little better, more sunshine. Not in BC, though, so we're not going to permanent summertime, daylight savings. It's a very sad story, that. But
right. We should be going to permanent mountain time, not savings.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm all for that. But apparently, according to the Premier, he says, we're tired of waiting for the big guys to say we're going. So we said, okay, we're going by ourselves. So,
well, they had a vote here in Alberta, but it failed because the vote was for daylight savings, not for standard time.
Right.
So. Oh, well.
Which only goes to show you can please some of the people some of the time.
Yeah, that's right.
So you should go for standard and a half time. Split the difference and be happy with that.
Exactly. And they're all touting that Saskatchewan didn't change time or doesn't do daylight savings, but the reason Saskatchewan doesn't do either is because the timeline is in the middle of the province, which means half the province would be on mountain time and half the province would be on central time. So they said, let's split the difference and stay on one time year round.
Right.
What time is it where you are, Dennis?
We're on the same time here down in beautiful Yuma, Arizona, where I've snuck away to enjoy a few days of sunshine. But I guess this Saturday, though, you guys are going to spring ahead, and you'll be an hour ahead of us after Saturday. So,
right. And Arizona doesn't change time either.
No.
Because the timeline's in the middle of the state.
So,
what do you do when you live in a
few people who are smart? Anyway.
There you go. Okay. Let's see. Before we get into this week's episode, we have a few current events. Nova Scotia has been in the news lately. They are trying to move forward with massive fire service revisions. The province is passing laws down that's going to override all the municipalities and change everything. The progressive, aggressive municipalities are worried they're going to get their power taken away, and the little municipalities are worried it's going to cost them a ton of money. And people are yakking about it online. So we'll see what happens. At least they're trying to do something, which is good, better than Alberta.
Yeah,
Denis,
but
do you have anything to say?
Yeah, none of that is true, actually.
Oh, okay.
This is all the province wanted to do that. They got pushed back. The legislation they wrote says we're not changing any of the governance. All they're doing is maybe going to introduce training standards, and they're going to introduce another layer of administration by adding a fire commissioner on top of the fire marshal. So the objective was to simplify the legislation and to provide more accountability. And the result is an additional layer of administration at the provincial level, which means a political appointment. And they're not going to change anything on the local governance side of things. So once again, they dodged. That's my opinion.
That's politics.
That's politics.
Yep. And more bureaucrats.
That's right. Lots of spaghetti where the spine should be.
I've seen lots in the news about it in the local Facebook posts from the different municipalities and stuff like that. So it's interesting. Yeah. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, everybody's excited. They don't want to lose their little fiefdom.
Right. Oh, fiefdom in the fire service? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I
know. It doesn't happen, right? Yeah. Dennis doesn't know anything about fiefdoms in the fire service.
Yeah.
Never heard of them.
Yeah, go out and feed the horses.
Speaking of horses, Hyundai had donated 4 brand new design remote-controlled firefighting quotation marks robots to the Korean Fire Service, in addition to several operating within the country's larger fire departments already. So these aren't tracked, these are wheeled, and they're like an Argo kind of size vehicle, a little smaller, and they have a monitor and cameras and all this kind of stuff on it. And so they've been donated in Korea to around the country, strategically placed. I know Denis is a big fan of remote controlled firefighting monitors.
Well, I'm
Dennis,
not
what do
sure.
you think?
Yeah, anything that we do in the fire service, if it actually improves response and firefighter safety and is used consistently, I'm all for it, giving it a try. But the problem is a lot of this stuff is so technologically advanced, and then the parts, and then you're tied into service contracts. Um, I'm kind of old school. I'm not a big fan of these automatic governors. I mean, I like being able to, when I'm operating the pump, being able to push and pull levers and feel how the truck's operating. So if it works, great. If it's used and it saves lives, great. Um, I don't know. That's all I got.
I'm curious to know how committed Hyundai is to this technology, because also this week was an announcement that their engine plant, and I forget what state in the US it's in, just bought a new fire truck to protect their facilities, and it's an E1.
Well, what's wrong with that? That's a good idea. It's an E1.
Yeah,
Yes, I saw
yeah.
that.
It
Yes.
wasn't one of their own.
Well, no, they don't build fire trucks, as far as I know. I was surprised actually to see Hyundai in the remote firefighting vehicle market, because I'd never seen that before. I mean, one of the largest, most advanced equipment builders in the world, ships, cranes, excavation equipment, and cars, now getting into the firefighting side. So interesting to see.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'll bite my tongue on that.
okay. Speaking of remote controlled vehicles for firefighting, I noticed an ad from a company that's trying to sell a burning electric vehicle, remote controlled vehicle mover to provide fire services a tool to use in a parking garage or something when they have an EV burning, that they could go in with this thing, hook onto the EV and drag it outside. So I saw this the other day as an ad for a company. It's like, wow, now there's something.
It's called a tow truck.
You can't get in there with a tow truck to get it out of there because it's burning. It's full of the smoke that's going to kill you. It's going to make your children grow a third set of eyes.
So it's all remote? Is it wireless, or is it what? Obviously, it'd have to be wireless.
It was, I don't know if there was a wire on it or not. It might be wireless. I'm not sure. So it has a lithium ion battery too then. Anyway,
I don't know.
The big problem is the building exposure. When an EV catches fire, the intensity of the heat in a confined space, damaging the building and the other vehicles. And so it's a solution for parking garage fires, maybe.
I don't know. I've seen videos of those guys that do repos. They're pretty quick.
They are. I used to do a few of those. Yep. Anyway, it's just interesting to see somebody kind of capitalize on the catastrophic design of these electric vehicles catching fire in buildings by building a remover for them. So you never know. Maybe it'll take off.
Thinking outside the box instead of trying to come up with a way to pierce the batteries or foam the batteries or whatever. Remove the vehicle out of the equation.
Which I know several fire departments. One in Colorado, they did one where they threw water on it. I think they may have thrown a blanket on it, or they winched it out first with a chief's truck or something, winched it out of the garage, and then put a blanket on it and put the fire out and hauled it away on a tow truck. So,
yeah. Well, there's a stacked parking garage in Halifax that's part of a hospital, and right as you drive into the garage, there's 7 spaces set aside for EVs for charging.
Right.
And so they're right there in the entrance. So if any of them ever caught fire, nobody's getting out of the parking garage.
Yeah, well, State Farm Insurance took all the charging out of their parking garages because they're worried about a potential ignition source. And that was an article a couple of weeks ago. Somebody was saying they're letting these EV charging stations be located close to buildings, which, of course, we shouldn't maybe do if the EV is going to be an exposure hazard. But anyway, speaking of EVs, Underwriters Laboratories Fire Research Science Institute. They did burn lab testing over the last couple of years on EVs, and they found out that EV fires produce potentially genetic altering products of combustion that may alter the DNA of people breathing in these products of combustion because of all the metals and fluorines and stuff like that in the fire. So this is not like the speculation here. This is lab testing that UL did. Internal combustion vehicles are dangerous too, but the EVs are more so in the metals and stuff like that. There's a great article on this by the guy Stashed Training. He does YouTube videos and he goes through the whole report, and it's quite informative.
The problem with EVs is it aerosolizes all of these components. They come out under pressure. They become gaseous and they travel. So even if you're not at the EV fire, you're downwind, you're exposed.
Yeah, exactly. And contaminate all over the area too from falling out of the smoke. Yep.
All over your skin, your clothing, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So stay away from burning EVs.
Yeah.
Why do we build EVs and sell them? I'm not sure. Anyway, okay. Let's see. Hiram, Ohio fire service shut down. Fairly significant fire service, apparently, due to mass resignation of leadership. So apparently there was some dispute between the leadership and the administration, the city administration, and they all quit and they had to shut down because they had nobody above a rookie to go to calls. So it just happened a couple days ago.
Yeah, there's a number of those cases of
there is
fire department versus municipality tiffs going on right now, and they're
Yantic Fire Company and what's the name of the town?
Yeah, but it's not just Yantic. There's 4 fire companies in that municipality.
In Norwich.
Yeah, something like that.
Norwich, Connecticut. Yeah. And apparently their lawsuits launched, and now they tried to get together a couple of days ago, but it didn't work. And yeah.
Anyways, sign of the times.
Yep, a sign of the times. Stresses between administration and the fire service. Well, just on the one in the States there, where another community, what was it? South Tahoe was a small fire department south Tucson Fire Department just gave a contract to Rural Metro because they couldn't get enough volunteers to respond effectively and full time and stuff. So they're staffing like one truck, one station, 4 people. Rural Metro took it over. Okay. On to this week's incident. Let's see. In summary, on March 7th of 2008 in Salisbury, North Carolina, 2 male career firefighters, Victor Eisler, aged 40, and Justin Monroe, aged 19, were killed when they were trapped by rapidly deteriorating fire conditions inside a millwork facility in North Carolina. A millwork facility, so making moldings and all kinds of wood products for home construction, right? Is that how you would describe it? Cabinets?
Cabinets, yeah.
Cabinets, okay. The captain of the hose line crew they were with was also injured, receiving serious burn injuries. And Denise says here 2 other firefighters also received medical attention during this call.
Yeah, 2 RIT crew members plus a chief who fell off the loading dock. He was injured also.
He stepped off. That's right. Yep.
He rolled off, actually.
They crawled under the door, and then he rolled off the loading dock.
Yeah, there were so many issues with this fire, and we'll talk about them.
So this information comes from the NIOSH report, FF 2008-07, and Google Maps, and the Rick DeGroot's building construction for the fire service Facebook article. The municipal fire department involved in the incident serves a population of approximately 31,000 people in a geographic area of about 21.6 miles. At the time of the incident, the department employed 67 uniformed firefighters. The fire department operated 3 working shifts with typical staffing of 20 firefighters per shift. Each shift works 24 on, 48 off. The city is bisected by a major north-south interstate highway. The city also has regular daily Amtrak service to all major eastern cities in the United States. The fire department had a health and safety program aimed at meeting the requirements of NFPA 1500, which is a standard for fire department's occupational health and safety. The fire department utilized written standard operating procedures that covered a wide range of departmental operations, including incident command, organization, transfer of command, incident safety officer, rapid intervention, crew deployment, emergency evacuations, and Mayday procedures. Obviously, all factors in the episode we're going to discuss today, which is why they're pointing out they did have SOPs for these things. The fire department did pre-planning at commercial and large structures at least biannually to keep pre-plan information up to date. Yay! That is awesome. I mean, there's how many fire departments do I know of in Western Canada that do pre-planning? Very few. So this is a kudos here. Denis had a comment here, though. He just noted that it appears there was significant industrial and warehousing operations in the community. So another good reason to do lots of pre-planning, right?
Yeah, but as we will discover later, how you do your pre-planning is pretty important, right? So
right.
There's certain things you've got to identify, you've got to include, and until you can sit there and either have an incident like this and or properly game out in a scenario an incident like this, you may not appreciate all the things you should be pre-planning.
Yeah, I bought that software. A guy in Ottawa is making that pre-planning software. It's like inspections and pre-plans and everything. Works on iPads. It was FPX or F something X was it was really cool because you could just walk around, take pictures, and it built it all into the pre-plan, and it was accessible in the iPad in the trucks.
Yeah, but like when you walk into a big building and you look at like these buildings and you see a concrete block or a masonry wall and you go, oh, that's a fire separation. Not necessarily. You gotta be looking to make sure there's no gaps in those fire separations. So that's what I'm saying. You need to be looking for the right things.
But that'd be part of an inspection, right? I mean, if they're doing it, yeah.
Yeah.
Crews identified specific hazards and developed various fire suppression scenarios as part of the pre-planning process, which is really good. The fire department did hydrant flow testing, awesome, and used color-coded systems to identify each hydrant's available output. That's awesome. That's so hard to get done these days, is to get actually, I mean, yes, the city flows every hydrant every year, but to actually do flow testing and document it is critical. The fire department employed 2 fire marshals who conducted building inspections and enforced code violations. The fire marshals usually returned 30 days after an inspection to evaluate whether the cited violations had been corrected. Fire marshals also taught annual safety classes throughout the area, including the facility where the fire and fatalities had occurred. The fire department also employed 3 shift safety officers who worked a 24, 48-hour shift. Each shift safety officer so they had a safety officer on every shift. So 24/7, there's always one on call, which is awesome. And conducted inspections and responded to structure fires and other incidents as a scene safety officer. The fire department maintained good working relationships with a number of local combination and volunteer departments that operated on a an automatic mutual aid basis. Yay, automatic mutual aid within the county. One particular combination department, Station 62, provided automatic mutual aid for rapid intervention team. So it's kind of unique how they had their automatic mutual aid departments assigned to a role. If we call you, this is what we want you for. I thought that's innovative. That's unique. It's good. Like this department was doing a lot of things right.
Yeah, they sure were. And why that's important is because, number one, that when they arrive on scene, they know their job right away.
Yeah.
And number two, they can be prepared for that in advance. Mm-hmm. And since they know they're going to be called on to do this role, they will make sure that when they get off the truck, they're all booted and spurred, ready to go. And that's a good thing, as opposed to going up, meeting the IC, saying, hey, I'm here. What do you want me to do? Oh, then you go back and get ready. So you lose precious time there. So,
yeah, this is great for a small city, 36,000 people, working with their volunteer departments or neighbors on a specific task, because that's when we need automatic aid, mutual aid, is when we have a big call and we have to keep things going, which is great. Another department, Station 45, was called on to initiate Class A foam operations in the basement of the involved structure. So there's a note here from NIOSH in the report that says many of the firefighters working at the municipal fire department, the paid guys, the career guys, were also volunteer firefighters at a number of surrounding communities, some being ranking officers at their respective volunteer departments. That is so awesome that they fostered that relationship. Like where I live here near Red Deer, now 100 and whatever thousand people, the IAFF local will not allow any member to be a part-time on-call firefighter in the surrounding communities. They have to quit if they join Red Deer, which is a terrible shame because it could build such a great relationship. But I mean that Ontario had that whole thing about two hatters years ago, and lots of kerfuffle about that and stuff like that. So, but this is good. They're working together, which is what I want to see, right? Denis not going to say a word because he used to be a chief in Ontario. Okay.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the training experience of this fire department, which is Salisbury, North Carolina. So the state of North Carolina, its Fire and Rescue Commission requires firefighters to be trained to NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Association, firefighter level 1 and level 2. So that's both levels. Based on the
awesome.
requirements, yeah, awesome. Based on the requirements of NSPA 1001, which is a standard for firefighter professional qualifications. So the municipal fire department requires new recruits to have training that meets at a minimum the North Carolina Fire and Rescue Commission live fire qualifications. So that's a separate practical, probably, and theory test that they do specifically for firefighting live fire prior to being hired, right? So this is a pre-qualification. Once hired, firefighters have 18 months to advance to their NFPA level 2. So there's a phase-in period there. So the municipal fire department requires each firefighter to pass a modified fitness challenge test twice per year and to pass an annual physical. So that's excellent. Firefighters employed by the municipal fire department are also required to complete a minimum of 240 hours of refresher training each year, which is a fair bit. The deputy chief serves as the department training officer. Each shift also has a designated training officer. The training officers meet and plan out training exercises for the 3 months in advance. Training is usually 8 hours long, with some training lasting up to 12 hours. Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays are designated training days, so that catches every shift. Specialized training on topics such as hazardous materials, heavy rescue, trench rescue, and etc. is provided annually. Firefighters can request off-site training through official channels. Once approved by the department, the firefighter can travel to attend training on department time with all expenses paid by the department. And they probably got some type of a LODD set up and so forth. So firefighter Victor Eisler had been employed by the fire department since June 2007. And if you remember, the date of this was March 2008. So he'd been probably 8 or 9 months on the job with the Salisbury Fire Department. But he had over 15 years of total experience, where he had previously worked as an emergency medical technician at a major metropolitan fire department in the Northeast, and had been a valedictorian of his medic class at that fire department. So we don't know if his experience was as a firefighter or just as a medic, but I get the feeling it was primarily as a medic. Anyway, records provided by the fire department showed that firefighter Eisler had completed 477 hours of training since June of 2007. So 477 hours in the 8 or 9 months that he had been on the job with Salisbury. Firefighter Justin Monroe, who was the other fatality, had been employed by the fire department also since June 2007, so also only 8 or 9 months on the job, and previously had been a volunteer firefighter with a neighboring volunteer department since he had joined as a junior firefighter at age 14. So he had about 4 or 5 years total experience, according to this information. Records provided by Salisbury Fire Department showed that firefighter Monroe had completed 121 hours of training since June of 2007, so in the 8 or 9 months. He was attending a local community college. He was working towards a fire science degree. The injured captain, who was the captain of the crew where these two guys lost their lives, he had been employed by the fire department since November 1987, and at the time had over 21 years of total experience. Training records provided by the Salisbury Fire Department showed that the injured captain had completed 3,190 hours of training since January 2003 until the time of the incident.
Well trained. I mean, they had some experience from various jobs and lots of training, and the state had mandatory training, which was good to see for sure.
Yeah. The thing that's disturbing here is these two guys who lost their lives had been on the job barely over half a year.
Yeah.
And even with prior experience, you do not necessarily have the experience with the fire department that you need to work as a cohesive team. That takes several years of building up that muscle memory. So you're in with a captain who you served with, and like if you get a new captain on shift, it takes many, many, many shifts before you start to understand how he operates, how he's thinking, and even little things, how he communicates, even though you understand the fire department fully. These guys, in that short period of time, I would think it would be a challenge to be fully acquainted with fire department operations. And this might very well have been their first major fire. We don't know that.
Could very well be.
I remember being on the job with, I was a volunteer lieutenant. This is many years ago. And I had a career firefighter on with me, and we were had a fire in a basement. It was rocking and rolling. And so I was the lieutenant. I went down with him, and we put the fire out. And when we came out, he was pretty thrilled, because that had been the first fire in, I forget how many years they'd been on the job, that he'd actually been on the nozzle and got to fight the fire. And I was surprised at that. But then when I thought about it, I realized that I went to more forests than he did, because he only served one shift out of 4, and I was there 50% of the time. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
It takes years, and sometimes the luck of the draw, you don't get the experience, the hands-on experience that you'd like to. Although these guys had a lot of hands-on training, but we don't know, whether how much of that was live fire training. We don't know.
Yeah, a lot of the part-time on-call and volunteer firefighters actually get a lot more fire experience than the paid guys. Because remember, the full-time career guys are working, like in this case, 8 shifts a month, maybe 7 shifts a month, right?
Yeah.
And if you're luck of the draw, you don't get calls and you don't have the experience. That's the whole reason why we do the podcast, is to build some muscle memory in your head, at least, of, hey, I've heard about this before, which is why we're here.
And we're going to hear later on in this incident that in fact, the young fellow here, who's only 19, he does get confused, and it's a training issue. He should not have gotten confused, and it may very well have contributed to his demise.
So equipment and personnel. At the time of the fire department operated a fleet of Quint pumpers out of 4 station houses. Central Station 1 housed Quint 1 with a minimum crew of 3 firefighters, Squad 1 with a crew of 2 firefighters, and Rescue 1 with a minimum crew of 3 firefighters. Each shift was supervised by a battalion chief stationed at Central Station. Each shift had an on-duty safety officer, which we talked a bit about before, and the administrative functions were also housed at Central Station. 3 outlying stations each housed a Quint apparatus staffed by a minimum of 3 firefighters, and each shift had a division chief who worked a daytime schedule Monday through Friday. The fire department's standard operating procedures, or SOPs, dictated that all on-duty firefighters and all apparatus to confirm working fire within the city. On a typical shift, 20 firefighters would be available to respond to a structure fire. The department also maintained procedures for calling off-duty personnel back to work as needed. Off-duty officers were placed on a rotating on-call roster for support roles at major incidents, such as operations chief, sector officers, and other support tasks. When we look at the site description, the building site complex, which is the Salisbury Millworks.
Just for our listeners, a Quint. What is a Quint? A Quint is a pumper truck with a aerial device of some sort. Minimum 50 feet, could be up to 100 feet, but that's a Quint. Just so some of our listeners that aren't firefighters don't know what a Quint is. And this is the reason they all had Quints in all the stations, is there was a concept going around for many years, and maybe it still is in certain areas, called Quint concepts, in that every pumper should have some sort of elevating device on it, 50 feet or longer. And this department possibly prescribed to that. I agree with it. I like it. But it's just something that some departments do. So anyway, that's what a Quint is, in case we're wondering.
And that's good to explain. Do we know if these Quints had master stream devices as well?
In the pictures, they did.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a big Quint fan.
I like Quints for smaller cities. Denny and I don't agree on that point, but we're Prevost, so we don't agree on a lot of points.
But this is a total Quint concept. So many things are compromised. Like, don't get me started. Anyways, I said I wasn't going to do this. Such a liar.
Denny wants to do the site description because he's done an excellent write-up on this.
Awesome. Okay.
This is a description of the generalized site, because when we get into the firefighting details, it's a little confusing. I'm hoping this will help a little bit. So the fire building complex, which was Salisbury Millworks, had an address on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue South. That's a mouthful. Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue South. And this avenue ran in a roughly east-west direction. It was actually southwest to northeast. So It's sometimes called north-south, sometimes east-west. I'm calling it east-west. Anyway, and was generally located in the southwest corner of the city of Salisbury. The street serviced a predominantly commercial and industrial area and wasn't far from the I-85. It wasn't a particularly large street, but it's a street with mostly industrial properties along it. So although the fire complex address is on MLK Avenue, looking at the map, the site was some distance away to the north of the address that was on the street. And you access the site down about a 900-foot long driveway, and this driveway came up between and serviced two separate businesses, one on the right and one on the left. And the one that was on fire was on the right. So the fire site itself actually backed onto a small service street called Railroad Street South. As expected, this small street ran along an active double-track rail line. It also ran in the east-west direction, so parallel to MLK Avenue. Accessed off of MLK Avenue, by the way, also. So you came in off of MLK Avenue whether you liked it or not. Because of the proximity to Railroad Street, once they got on scene, that side, the side that faced north, was designated by the IC as the Alpha side. And interestingly, the address side, which was along MLK Avenue, was then designated as the Charlie side. Anyway, there were a number of exposures. The Alpha exposure was the street, and behind that, the rail lines. On the Delta side was another millwork factory that was across the other side of the access drive. And it wasn't that close. It was fairly far away. There was room to park transport trucks and so forth in there. On the Bravo side was a large rubber products manufacturer, quite large. Interestingly, the closest exposure to the building on fire appears to be a bowstring truss roof building as their immediate exposure. So that's on the Bravo side. The Charlie exposure to the original fire area was a large and connected manufacturing and warehousing buildings of the millworks themselves. And then below that, further south, there was scrubland all the way down to MLK Avenue. There were a number of hydrants that were used on MLK Avenue, but they required long layouts, like over 1,000 feet. There was also a hydrant about 700 feet west along Railroad Street if you came in that way. Also likely, there might have been a number of yard hydrants on the site within more reasonable distances. And the narrative suggests there was at least one that was hooked to. The fire site itself consisted of predominantly the two large millwork warehouse buildings that were south of Railroad Street. The fire originated in a separate but attached smaller building that was in the Alpha Bravo quadrant of the large warehouse buildings and protruded northwards towards the Alpha side and fronted itself onto Railroad Street. So this smaller building was about 40 feet wide on its Alpha face and about 60 feet deep on its Bravo Delta sides. It contained offices, break rooms in the basement, which is the fire origin. Anyway, references in the narrative that you'll hear to the sides Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta actually refer for the most part to positions around the office building and usually not to the complex as a whole. So that's confusing. They talk about Charlie sector. It's not really on the Charlie side. It's kind of the basement access door in the Charlie Bravo corner, for instance. Anyway, along the remaining portion of the Alpha side of the building, in other words, not where the office building is over in the Alpha Bravo corner, but the rest of the Alpha side, was a series of loading docks. And that's important because the loading docks are used as access.
So they really, in their minds, it seemed like the office building, 2-story basement and main floor, was treated separately from the Charlie exposure, which was the millwork processing and warehouse area, because of potentially a firewall or something. We're not really sure on that, right, Denny?
Yeah. So you had 5,000 or 6,000 square feet in the office building on 2 floors. So, or whatever the number was.
The fire. Yeah.
And
they really viewed the other building as separate.
Yeah. And it's ordinary construction. We'll get into the construction of the building later on. It's a factor, no question.
Yeah. Okay, so the timeline and the responding apparatus. So the 911 was called at 7:05 a.m. The municipal fire department was dispatched approximately 7:05 for a structure fire at the local industrial park. As per departmental procedures, all apparatus and all on-duty firefighters were dispatched. So right away, because of where it was, they knew it was a big alarm, so they dumped every station, which is awesome. Let's see. Central Station, Quint 1 with an acting captain, acting engineer, an operator, and a firefighter, so 3. Rescue 1, a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter. Squad 2, 2 firefighters, Victor Eisler and Justin Monroe are 2 victims, with 2. Battalion chief, a safety officer, and a division chief. So that was Station 1, the central station. Station 2, Quint 2, captain, engineer operator, and a firefighter for 3. Station 3, captain, engineer, and a firefighter for 3. Station 4, Quint 4, Captain Rick Barkley, who was also injured, and then an engineer and a firefighter. So that totaled 20 people total that were responded, which was what it said in the preamble, is they always dumped for 20. So for a big mill like this, it's under NFPA recommendations. It's really slight. It should be 40-ish, I'm guessing.
Yeah, pretty light.
Yeah, very light. So, but
that's all they had, right? They dumped everybody.
Yep, they dumped everybody.
But more than that, the automatic aid is.
Yay, automatic aid.
And those numbers aren't there.
No.
Okay, personal protective equipment. At the time of the incident, each victim was wearing a full array of personal protective clothing, consisting of turnout gear, which is the coat and pants, a Nomex hood, helmet, gloves, boots, and a self-contained breathing apparatus, or we'll call it SCBA, with an integrated personal alert safety system, or PASS. And they even had in-mask heads-up displays, or HUDs. The municipal fire department utilizes 45-minute SCBA air cylinders for the response. Every firefighter carries a 50-foot or 15-meter rescue rope attached to their SCBA back frame. Every firefighter also carries a radio assigned to the riding position on each apparatus, and every company has a thermal imaging camera, and there's one carried on every apparatus, or we'll call it a TIC, or thermal imaging camera.
This is awesome. They got ropes on their packs. They got TICs. This is good.
2007.
They got it all.
2008.
That's early for 2007. That they jumped on it. Not early, but it's ahead of the curve, I would say.
Yeah, it's progressive.
There you go, progressive. The structure involved in this incident was a commercial building of ordinary construction. It housed Millwork's manufacturing facility that produced laminated cabinets, molding, and wood trim products. The site had housed a number of businesses over the years, mostly involved in the lumber and wood products manufacturing and sales. A number of fires had occurred at the site over the years, including major fires in 1939 and 1959. So this was an old building, although rebuilt. Totally destroyed the facility in 59. A smaller fire in 1998 had occurred. The facility was totally rebuilt following that 59 fire and had been in continuous operation since then. The structure has remained basically the same, with only minor renovations since 1959. The fire department was dispatched to the site in February of 2008, so a month before this fire. It was a small fire that had started near a bandsaw, with concern for fire spread into the wood dust collection and ventilation system, which is a huge hazard, by the way. And my friend over at the Combustible Dust podcast, Chris Clooney, Combustible Dust, we did an episode a couple months ago on that. Anyway, you want to be aware of that. In February, there's a note from NIOSH. The 2008 fire was contained to the immediate area and no structure damage occurred. The structure was made of brick and masonry walls with heavy timber beams supporting wooden floor joists. Yay, this is a good building to have a fire in. The flat roof was constructed of wooden roof decking supported by steel I-beams. Photos taken after the incident show the roof over the office area consisted of roof decking covered by layers of waterproof composite membrane and asphalt. The 79,000 square foot main building consisted of a basement and ground levels divided into office space, production and warehouse facilities. The office area was approximately 7,500 square feet on 2 levels and was separated from the production and warehouse facility by masonry walls on the ground level. The masonry walls also divided the office space, separating the administrative and accounting area. Railroad tracks ran parallel to the front or alpha side of the structure. An access road that provided access to the business within the industrial park ran between the railroad tracks and the structure. So there was an access road on that delta side. According to the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the March 7th fire, undetermined cause, originated above the drop ceiling in the basement under the office area. The fire was discovered burning in the basement by employees reporting for work in the morning of March 7th. The room of origin was used as a training classroom for an employee break area. The wiring in the basement was believed to have been installed in 1959 following the last major fire at the site. the structure did not contain a sprinkler system. Now, you get old wiring and modern appliances, you never know. The fire department had conducted a pre-planned inspection at the facility in December of 2006, and the city fire marshals conducted annual inspections, with the most recent inspection occurring on December of 2007, so 3 months before the fire. The pre-planned form included a hand sketch of the millwork facility, listed a probable strategy as an aggressive fire attack, noted hazards such as cluttered aisles, production machinery, and an open elevator shaft in the production area. It predicted rapid fire growth due to heavy fuel loads. The hand-drawn sketch did not identify the location of firewalls or provide detailed locations of doors, windows, offices, hallways, or other distinguishing features. I think Denis was going on about that in our preamble.
Yeah, so you've got a building that's quite large. It's hundreds of thousands of square feet. It's in a high-risk occupancy because there's a lot of dust and combustibles and warehoused in there. They've had multiple devastating fires at the site over the years that it's been in business for, the better part of 80 years plus, and it's not sprinklers. What? Sprinklers have been around since the 1800s. They're proven protectors for industrial sites, but this one was not sprinklered. So you as a firefighter, are you putting your life on the line for a property that the owners are not feeling that concerned about? You got to ask yourself that question.
As Grandpa Bruno would say, the building was built to burn.
Oh, built to burn and had. So it's not like it was well managed. It wasn't either. So, and in fact, you can go and look on Google Street View in 2008, and the business that's next to it that didn't burn, look at all the garbage that's on the back porch of that building, which used to be a railroad loading dock. There's garbage everywhere. Like one guy walking along just for fun, setting fire to that. And you've got a fire like they had in Charleston going on and taking out the building.
Well, and as many people know, Dennis and I both teach emergency management for one of the polytechnics here in Alberta. And I'm teaching right now remote and rural communities, and I've picked out several large fires that have occurred in remote and rural communities. And I tell the students, this is the fault of the community not doing enough fire prevention, education, inspections, and mandating alarm systems and sprinkler systems. Really, the community planning and they own these events. And so for the community not to mandate sprinklers in a building like this, you're asking for it to go. And unfortunately, yes, it costs more money, but in the end, it killed some firefighters. The fatalities in this instant occurred inside the loading dock and the warehouse in an area where finished products were staged ready for shipment. But it doesn't even mention in here if it had a fire alarm. And I go to all these businesses when I visit businesses, and I go, if they don't have a fire alarm, like, you're asking for trouble. The building's empty all night. We used to have night watchmen all the time. Remember that? Every building had a night watchman. That's kind of gone away now. We just kind of let it go. But no alarm, no night watchman. Guess what? You got a delayed fire when you show up because someone sees it when they walked into work.
Yeah. So three things. They don't say it in the investigation, but clearly it's a delayed alarm because the first apparatus arrives on scene and they got fire showing out the windows and doors. So, yeah, that's not incipient. Second thing is where are the risk assurers, the insurance company on this property? Because they paid to replace the entire business in 1959. Did they pay to replace it in 1938 or 36 or whenever the other fire was? Were they prepared to replace this building and business one more time?
They didn't.
Newsflash, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. It's a parking lot. Yeah.
And the last point I had was they did a pre-plan on this, but the pre-plan consisted of a hand-drawn sketch and didn't note certain things such as fire separations and so forth. If you're going to do a pre-plan in a high-risk facility like this, you should be thinking ahead, where's my defensive perimeters? What could I defend? What would it take to defend it? Where would I draw the line? Would I go into the loading dock with a hand line or a 2.5 or whatever it is, or would I stick a monitor in there to protect my firewall from spreading into the warehouse? What is there a firewall between the two warehouses? Are there dividing firewalls or separations? I mean, separations are nothing, but firewalls are important. Are they there? Like, could you defend them? Is this building built to burn? All of it. And there's no possible way we can stop it. So we're not killing ourselves trying. These are all questions that should be in the pre-plan.
Denis would say, take the ladder off one of the next pumpers you buy and spend the money on pre-planning.
Yes, I would say that.
Gee, I knew it.
Kudos to these guys. You know, they're doing a lot of good stuff at the time, and we commented about the pre-planning and stuff they've done. And earlier in the podcast, we said, wasn't this great? And then we get to this part, and it's a hand-drawn sketch without any major features. So that was the one that Denny just caught, and I was going to say, like, you know what, maybe a little bit more work there. So yeah, no, that's all good. So with the weather, so changing weather conditions might have contributed to the incident. Rain began falling sometime after the firefighters arrived on scene to begin initial fire suppression activities. During the incident, changing weather conditions and shifting winds caused heavy dark smoke to bank down and cover the incident scene. Now, this smoke severely restricted fireground visibility and even forced the pump operators to don the SCBA while working around their apparatus, interfered with the designated fireground rehab area, and forced the designated RIT team to change their staging area in front of the structure. The smoky conditions obscured the vision of the incident commander and their crews working in the area. That's a big red flag. Now, at the time of the initial fire dispatch, weather conditions were overcast, approximately 45 degrees Fahrenheit or 7 degrees Celsius, 82% relative humidity, and east-northeast winds at approximately 9 miles or 14 kilometers per hour. So that was kind of pushing in on the Alpha Bravo quadrant. Weather conditions at 0800 hours were approximately 46 degrees Fahrenheit or 8 degrees Celsius, 93% relative humidity, and now the east winds were at approximately 4 miles or 6 kilometers per hour in rain, which was now impacting the Bravo side. At the approximate time of the fatalities, winds of approximately 10 miles an hour or 16 kilometers per hour were blowing from the east-northeast.
Okay. So 10 miles an hour, it's now in concern speeds. Like you have to be concerned about creating fire paths now, flow paths.
Yeah, for sure.
And that happens. So we're going to talk a little bit about the investigations. So on March 7th, 2008, the Municipal Fire Department was dispatched at 07:05 hours, like we've already said, to a structure fire that was reported to be in the basement of the Millworks facility in the local industrial park. It was actually in the basement of the office complex. It was. Per department procedures, all on-duty firefighters were dispatched from their 4 stations. B shift was just completing their 24-hour shift. So Quint 1 responded with an acting captain, engineer, operator, and firefighter in position near the front corner of the office area. In other words, which would be the AD corner along the D side. So that would be in front of the warehouse doors, basically, is where that is. Remember, most of these Alpha Bravo are related to the office building, not the complex. And they assumed truck company operations. So those would be, forcible entry, surveillance, looking for, I'm not sure what entirely all they would be doing, but not firefighting. So Rescue 1 responded with a captain, their engine operator, and their firefighter on board with their 3. The firefighter was responding on that truck, was responding to his first major fire. So the captain talked to him about fireground procedures as they traveled to the fire. So he was not a fully functioning firefighter, really. Rescue 1 was the second unit on scene and parked along the fence on the B side, separating the Millworks facility from an adjoining business to the north, actually the northeast. So that's the rubber products manufacturing one I was talking about. So there's an alley between these two businesses is what there is. They observed flames shooting out of the basement door on the B side of the Millworks structure. So this is actually in the Bravo Charlie corner of the office structure. Quint 2 responded with a captain, their engine operator, and the firefighters, so the 3. And they arrived first on scene at approximately 5 minutes after the time of call. They confirmed a working fire with fire showing and heavy brown smoke visible in the basement under the office area. Quint 2 passed a hydrant along the main highway as they were coming up to the site, so that would be Martin Luther King Avenue, and dropped 1,200 feet of 5-inch supply to the front of the millworks. And so they drove all the way down this 900-foot alleyway and all the way across the Alpha side of the building to the Alpha Bravo corner, dropping 1,200 feet of 5-inch hose. That's quite a quint to carry 1,200 feet of 5-inch hose. So they obviously had them set up for long lays.
That's one of those better brands.
Yeah.
Well, they got an industrial area, right? So they're going to have to be loaded up for hose.
Yeah. But I will say 1,200 feet off a hydrant, you're not going to get a lot of water out the other end in my experience.
I think you need something in between there or something at the hydrant.
Yeah. So maybe they had high pressure hydrants. I don't know.
Maybe they had a 4-way valve and you could have put a pump at the hydrant.
They didn't, though. Anyways, I don't know. Anyway, Quint 2 captain quickly sized up the Alpha and Bravo sides of the structure and took a bundled 2.5-inch hose line to the basement door that was located on the Charlie side of the Bravo side, while the engineer established water supply. The Quint 2 captain then instructed the Quint 2 firefighter to bring the 2.5 nozzle to the basement door. The Quint 2 captain notified dispatch that a working fire was present in the basement and requested that the utility companies be notified.
Hey, he grabbed a 65 or a 2.5. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good, but it doesn't get as good now, though, because the firefighter grabbed a nozzle and also pulled a 1 3/4-inch hand line as a backup. Normally, your backup's supposed to be a same size or larger, right? That's what I was always taught. But anyways, so once the 2.5-inch hose line was charged, the Quint 2 captain and firefighter couldn't drag the hose around the corner to enter the basement door because the door went in at an angle and you had to make a corner at the bottom, and they couldn't do that because the 2.5, as we all know, when it's properly charged, two guys are not handling it. It takes probably 4. Anyway, he couldn't drag the corner, so they decided to advance the 1 3/4. Fire was blowing out the open doorway up above their heads, I guess, and extending up the side of the brick exterior wall 10 or 12 feet above the door. Clearly, there was a delay on this alarm. It didn't develop that quickly in the 2 minutes they were on site. The Rescue 1 crew, the captain and firefighter, next arrived on scene, as we'd already said, and provided assistance to the Quint 2 crew. The basement area under the ground level offices appeared to be fully involved, and the crews had to knock down fire at the doorway in order to enter the basement. The Quint 2 crew was able to advance the 2.5-inch hose line into the basement when they were backed up by the Rescue 1 crew. And the Rescue 1 crew also brought the 1 3/4. The fire burning around the doorway had by then burned through the 1 3/4 hand line less than a minute after the crews entered the basement. So they're going in a doorway with fire coming out over their heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have pulled the plug at that point, but they didn't. So the on-duty safety officer, Safety 1, arrived on scene about a minute after these guys were on scene and assumed incident safety officer duties. Remember, he's the guy that's has a dual role when he's on scene, right?
Yeah,
or on shift, right?
Safety,
he's inspection and safety, right? So the on-duty battalion chief then arrived on scene around 07:12 hours. So that's about 7 minutes into the call. And he had directed all units to switch to fireground channel 2 and assumed incident command. He positioned his vehicle in front of the warehouse doors near the AD corner of the office building and was used as a stationary command post throughout the incident. So he stayed in his car. So, but changing weather conditions, we talked about smoke. Yeah, good procedure. But he needs people talking to him, right? Anyway, changing weather conditions, the structure company, the structure itself, where the vehicles were parked, a semi-trailer at the loading dock, and a large tree between his location and the office building all interfered with his getting a clear view of the incident scene. Plus, he was only looking at the Delta side. Could have probably seen some of the Alpha side of the office building. And then there were rain causing the smoke to bank down to the ground at level, at times obstructing the view of the incident. I've been to lots of fires where this has happened, and it's hard when you can't see and the smoke's all around you, and it's just a mess, right? So that's one of the things where being mobile in your command and on your feet sometimes has advantages. You can walk around to the other side very quickly and easily. Anyway.
What are those called? Let me see. Divisions or groups, right? You make officers in charge of, supervisors in charge of divisions or groups.
Yeah. Anyway, Squad 1, which is had firefighter Eisler and firefighter Monroe, who only people on this truck, and again, both had only been on 8 or 9 months, arrived, and they with those guys on board. Quint 4 responded with Captain Rick Barkley, their engineer and their firefighter, and they arrived on scene about 8 minutes after the time of the call and began second engine company operations. They laid another 5-inch supply line from a hydrant that was located south of the Millwork facility, which was likely a yard hydrant somewhere along this access lane, and then positioned in front of the loading dock on the A side. Quint 3 responded with a captain, engineer, operator, and firefighter and arrived on scene about 10 minutes after the time of the call. The crew connected to a hydrant on the highway on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue, east of the structure. So this is further away from the driveway than the previous layout had been, and laid a 5-inch supply line to the D side of the warehouse where Quint 3 was positioned. After positioning Quint 3, the crew walked to Quint 1 and began second truck company operations.
So at 13 minutes after time of call, Squad 1 crew was assigned to team up with the engineer from Quint 1 to begin vertical ventilation of the office roof, truck company operations, right? Vertical ventilation. The Quint 1 aerial was raised to the office roof and used for roof access. See, much nicer than a ground ladder, Denny. That's why the Quint is handy. An off-duty on-call captain also arrived on scene approximately 25 minutes after time of call. Reported to the command post that it was assigned as operations chief to manage fire suppression operations. So command has sectored off. He's following ICS or NIMS principles. He's in the command post, and the ops section chief is going to be outside watching the guys do their stuff, work directly with the attack crews. The operations chief was first heard in radio transmissions at approximately 53 minutes after time of call. So he didn't talk much on the radio, but it would have been all face-to-face except for reporting back to command. An off-duty on-call safety officer, Safety 2, also reported to the command post and was assigned to assess the interior conditions and report back to command. Safety 2 was later assigned as the Sector B chief, Bravo chief, to aid the incident management system command. So they did a good job of ICS here, which is awesome. A captain working an 8-hour shift conducting inspections also reported to the IC and was assigned as Sector Charlie, basement chief. A rehab area was established near the railroad tracks in front of the millwork facilities. This area was used by firefighters as a resting area between assignments and for changing out SCBA cylinders. The Quint 2 captain radioed the Quint 2 engineer, shut down the 1 3/4 hose line, because remember it had burst in the doorway. The Rescue 1 crew backed out, and the Quint 2 engineer pulled a second 65 mil or 2.5-inch hose line down to the basement doorway, and to the Rescue 1 crew. They re-entered the basement with the 2.5 or 65 mil hose line. They advanced about 20 to 30 feet, 6 to 9 meters inside the basement. Dennis added all these metric things in here because he likes us to use metric. The second 2.5 or 65 mil line had a fog nozzle, and the fog pattern did not have the desired effect on the fire. The fog pattern just pushed the fire around and did not knock down the fire. Denise freaking out here while I'm saying this. Surprise! So they called for the Quint 2 engineer to bring them another 2.5-inch 65 mil hose line with a smoothbore nozzle. Yay! This is 2007. Smoothbore were dead around then. Like everybody that was all fog, right? It was just starting to come back. Denise says, not him, not him. The crew, but I was still selling automatic nozzles in 2007. No, maybe not. Maybe I wasn't. The crew backed out and got the third 2.5-inch 65 hose line and entered the basement again. They were able to advance this line inside the basement a short distance, about 10 feet, 3-5 meters, and to the training room located under the first floor office. The Rescue 1 captain radioed command that it appeared that he had knocked down the fire in the basement. The incident safety officer confirmed smoke was turning from gray to white in the basement, indicating good steam conversion, and also the smoke on the first floor was beginning to turn.
Well en route, Quint 1 crew heard the Quint 2 radio. Try that again. Well en route, the Quint 1 crew heard the Quint 2 captain radio that the Quint 2 crew was connecting to the hydrant at the highway and would lay supply line to the front of the structure. The Quint 1 acting captain knew another hydrant was located near the Alpha Bravo corner in front of the structure, so Quint 1 proceeded to that hydrant. When Quint 1 arrived at the front of the structure, the captain observed that Quint 2 was blocking the hydrant that he wanted to connect to. The Quint 1 acting captain instructed the acting engineer on where to position Quint 1 at the Alpha Delta corner. The Quint 1 acting captain and the firefighter then pulled a pre-connected 1 3/4 45 millimeter hand line off of Quint 2 and pulled it to the front entrance to the office area, which is the Alpha side at the ground level. The acting captain and firefighter forced the door open and entered the office area. Now, it's noted here that the acting captain dropped his rope bag at the front door while forcing it open. He carried the Quint 1 thermal imaging camera, or the TIC, inside with him. They observed heavy smoke and moderate heat, but did not observe any fire. Visibility was near zero. The acting captain radioed the incident commander and reported the interior conditions.
Opening that front door is into the wind.
Yeah.
So you're now letting wind in under pressure.
Pretty good oxygen.
Possibility, yeah.
The Quint 1 acting captain and firefighter proceeded straight down the center hallway, deeper into the office area. They checked each office door with the TIC as they came to it, trying to locate the seat of the fire. They advanced about 50 feet or 15 meters down the hallway on their hands and knees. They began to feel heat transmitting through the floor, and the floor felt sticky to the touch. Now, this is probably due to the paint or lacquer on the floor being heated by the heat of the fire there. 20 minutes after the time of call, the Quint 1 acting captain radioed from inside the office area that the fire had broken through the floor of an office to their left on the Bravo side of the office area, and their hand line was hung up and they had to stretch it out. Their hand line was hung up and they had to stretch out the hose to advance the nozzle into the office where they began to cool the fire. Now, again, here's another note. The incident command and the command staff had previously considered venting the first floor, but decided against it as they did not want to draw the fire up to the first floor. The original goal was to contain the fire to the basement. After knocking down the fire in the office, they returned to the hallway and advanced to the end of that hallway. They observed heat in every office they checked, but only observed fire in the one office. Well en route, Quint 4 crew heard the radio traffic from Quint 2, confirming the working fire also radio trafficked about approaching the structure from the street to the southwest of the structure, and they connected to a hydrant located in the front of a grocery distribution center located south of the Millworks factory. Now, this would have been about another 1,400 foot or 427 meter layout. The firefighter dismounted Quint 4 at the hydrant, and Quint 4 proceeded to position in front of the loading dock area near the middle of the structure, so about the A side. The Quint 4 firefighter connected the 5-inch or 125 millimeter supply line to the hydrant, charged the hydrant, and then walked to Quint 4 to meet his crew. Squad 1 responded with 2 firefighters. That was Squad 1 reported with 2 firefighters, Victor Eisler and Justin Monroe, and they arrived on scene and were assigned to ventilate the roof over the office area along with the engineer operator from Quint 1. Another note here is, as per departmental SOPs or standard operating procedures, the Squad 1 crew and the engineer from the first truck. Note, as per department SOPs, the Squad 1 crew and the engineer from the first truck company form the roof ventilation crew.
Well, just a note here to people, just a note to the listeners. So this may seem a little confused in how it's narrated. That's how the NIOSH report was as well. It's quite confusing which truck and when, and people are already there, but then they're talking about them again. We tried to straighten it out a little bit. Both Denis and I tried, but this is what we get. So just in case you're wondering why it's this way, we didn't write this initially, right?
No, that's a good point, Paul. Bear with us here, folks, as we work through some of this here. So the Quint 1 ladder was used to access the roof. Roughly at 19 minutes after the time of call, the incident commander ordered the roof crew off the office roof as fire had broken through the first floor window and was impinging upon the Quint 1 aerial ladder. Soon after, Rescue 1 captain radioed the IC that Rescue Crew 1 was backing out of the basement due to high heat and deteriorating conditions. The Quint 2 crew also exited the basement. The crews worked their hose lines through the basement door from the outside for several minutes. 22 minutes after the call, the incident commander requested a personal accountability report, or we'll sometimes call that a PAR, which confirmed accountability for all crews. 24 minutes after the time of call, the IC radioed to all crews that they were now in a defensive mode and were going to work to protect the exposures. During this time period, the Quint 4 captain met with the IC and incident safety officer face to face and discussed the conditions inside the loading dock or the warehouse area. The incident safety officer just completed the interior size up in the warehouse area and described a doorway leading into the office area. So note, there was actually 2 doorways leading from the warehouse area into the office area. One was located near the front or A side wall, and the other was located about halfway back. The Quint 4 captain, Rick Bartley, was assigned to take the 2.5-inch or 65 millimeter hose line inside the loading dock to protect the warehouse area. The Squad 1 crew, which was Victor Eisler and Justin Monroe, who had come down from the roof, were teamed up with the Quint 4 crew to assist with the hose line. The Quint 1 crew backed out and changed out their SCBA cylinders. They observed heavy smoke outside that obscured their views of the apparatus in front of the structure when they got outside. After changing their air cylinders, the Quint 1 crew went around to the delta side of the office area to knock out the windows in an attempt to release the heat and smoke. The incident commander asked the Quint 1 crew to go back inside the office area to pull ceiling and assess the need for vertical ventilation.
So they're opening up the office building. They're taking out windows. They're opening sets of doors. The front door is open, which is facing the wind. They got a basement door open on the Bravo side, which is in an alleyway, which is also catching the wind that's blowing. And they got the fire. Looks like it's coming up through the floor from the basement. So, things are going to start moving, right? I mean, there's a lot of oxygen going into this scene right now. So about 20 minutes after the time of the call, the Quint 2 captain had a crew of 3 firefighters from a mutual aid volunteer department assist his crew in pulling a 2.5-inch line from Quint 1 to the office area D side basement door. So remember, Quint 2 is working on the Bravo side basement door. There's also a D side basement door. So they pull another line and they open another basement door on the opposite side, on the downwind side. They advanced the hose line a short distance into the basement and began knocking down visible fire that's burning at the ceiling level. They encountered good conditions with good visibility and little heat. So this makes you think the fire's not coming out there. It's got to be going somewhere else, right? It's not coming there. Then they lose pressure on the hose line. So the Quint 2 captain goes back outside, returns to Quint 1 to check on the water pressure. Then they restore the water pressure. And Quint 2 captain then re-enters the basement through that delta side door. So the Quint 4 and Squad 1 crews, which are around on the Bravo side, don their SCBA and pull, they're not on that side, they're on the Alpha side. So the Quint 4 and Squad 1 crews don their SCBA and pull an on-charged 2.5-inch pre-connected hose line in through a loading dock door and into the warehouse area of the structure. So they're on the more to the delta side of the building that's on fire. So they're going in through one of those front doors on the Alpha side. So the Quint 4 captain, who's Rick Barkley, he carries a thermal imaging camera with him. And the Quint 4 firefighter who's with him was instructed to bring extra sections of hose to the loading dock door and to stay outside until all hose connections are made and the line is charged. So they got extra hose that's laying on the deck in the warehouse.
So this is in the warehouse, not the office.
That's right. So they're in the warehouse. They're looking to go around to the Charlie side of the office and come in through one of the doors that they had found. So at that point, then they'll be in the Alpha side of the office. And if they get in through the warehouse, they'll come in the Charlie side of the office on the main floor. Well, in the basement, they're in a basement door on the Bravo side and the basement door on the Delta side. So they'll have everything opened up pretty much if they get to what they're planning to do. Anyway, at approximately 07:38 hours, so this is a little more than half an hour into the incident, Quint 4 Captain Rick Barkley radios the IC that he's advancing a 2.5-inch hose line into the warehouse with a crew of 4. So that's the 2 guys from the squad and the 2 guys from Quint 4, which includes the captain. The crew tied a rope line, his search line, safety line, to a bench on the loading dock before he entered, in anticipation, I guess, that visibility would decrease while he's walking into this large area.
And it's a large area, yeah.
Yeah. And smart move, even though visibility is good at this point. So the Gwent 4 captain and the Squad 1 crew, those two guys who lose their lives, went on air as they entered the warehouse area. Visibility was good, and they couldn't detect much heat. They made their way through the warehouse, turning left in the doors, made a left past the stacks of 4x8 sheets of laminated sheeting to advance towards the office area. So we've seen this stuff, right? Like melamine, it's press board with plastic, coating on it. This laminated sheeting stuff that they make cabinets out of. We've all seen it. So Quint 4 Captain Rick Barkley and Squad 1 firefighters Eisler and Monroe advance through the door that they find and into the office area. So they find this door into the back end of the office area, and they go in that doorway. And the Quint 4 firefighter pulls slack through the warehouse, from the warehouse doors, pulling slack towards the office, and fed it into the crew. So one guy, the Quint 4 guy, stands outside and jacks hoses into the office behind the crew of 3. So the Quint 4 firefighter ran low on air and told firefighter Eisler that he was going outside to change his air cylinder because he couldn't see the captain to report, so he just told firefighter Eisler. So the crew by then had forced open the back door to the office, and the captain uses his tick to check the offices and overhead areas of that first floor office for heat. The captain radioed for the hose line to be charged as they were advancing into the office area. So up until now, the hose line's slack, right? So
this is the thing. This is something to watch out for. This is a lesson that isn't pointed out in the recommendations, maybe, but in a large building, there's a strong tendency for the crew to spread out. Obviously, one or two because they're humping hose way back around the two corners you went around. But because it's such a large area, often that crew of 3 or 4 will get spread out in that area, and then they lose that constant communication with each other. Too far to talk with SCBAs on, dark, and no, just radios. So just something to be aware of. If you're in a large building, there's a real tendency to spread out, and that's how we lose people.
Yeah. And there's one other thing, and we just breezed by it and didn't say anything about it, but I'm about to. The captain radioed for the hose line to be charged as they were advancing into the office area. So up until now, the hose line is not charged.
Yeah.
So, and they have extra hose lying on the floor. So everybody's seen a hose line when it's charged and it's extra long. What happens? It does not stay where it was. It moves.
Yeah.
So if you've gone into a building pulling a charge line behind you, you have a pretty good visual of where that line is. But if it's dry and you charge it and it moves, you don't have that visual anymore. And if you're depending on that hose line as you're way out following that line, it's going to become more complicated for you. And I think we'll find out more about that in a minute. Anyway, they started to encounter gray smoke banking down about halfway from the ceiling to the floor, and they could also feel an increase in heat. At this point, the tick was showing heat at the floor level, which the other crew had already noticed who came in the alpha side. Anyway, the Quint 4 crew crawled forward on their hands and knees, and Quint 4 entered on the office on their left to search for fire extension, which would be the Delta side. The tick indicated heat in a ceiling vent, so water was flowed towards the ceiling vent. A pike pole was used to pull some ceiling tiles, but the crews did not observe any fire overhead. So it begs the question, why is there heat in an overhead ceiling vent? Anyway, the Quint 4 firefighter then, after he changed his pack, re-entered the warehouse after changing his cylinder and followed the hose line back to the crew in the office area. The captain, Rick Barkley, observed that both the Quint 4 firefighter and Squad 1 firefighter Monroe were breathing heavily and consuming a lot of air. He talked to them about calming down and conserving their air supply. The Quint 4 firefighter and firefighter Monroe had to go outside, change their air cylinders. The second cylinder change for the Quint 4 firefighters. He's gone through 2 cylinders already. So he's really using up a lot of air. When the 2 firefighters went outside to change their cylinders, the Quint 4 captain decided to stay with Victor Eisler in the office area, where the other 2 went to change their cylinders. So you got 2 guys going out to change cylinders. The other 2 guys should change too, just to get everybody. So the captain and firefighter Eisler advanced and encountered the Quint 1 crew in the office hallway. Remember, Quint 1 had come in from the office side door. It had gone in, what did they say, 60 feet or so, or 50 feet or 45 feet into the back. So they met up because they're on this central hallway. So they met the captain, and he gave his rope bag to the Quint 1 captain and asked him to tie off his rope outside the door on the alpha side, thereby establishing a second escape route for the Quint 4 crew if they got into trouble. So they could go backwards on their rope or they could go forwards. The Quint 1 crew was low on air and then had to go outside to change their air cylinders. So Quint 3 crew relieved Quint 2 back at the B-side basement door. So that was about 34 minutes into the call. So Rescue 1 and Quint 3 crews then re-entered the basement after discussing the basement conditions with the IC. So they're not giving up on this basement. They're back in again. So about 39 minutes into the call, the incident commander radioed to Rescue 1 captain, asked what would be needed to contain the fire in the basement area. The Rescue 1 captain requested to switch back to offensive operations to re-enter the basement and to get a better angle of flow on the water. Note that the B-side basement doors had a limited angle. They didn't face directly into the basement, and at which water could be flowed in the basement. It interfered with their ability to get the hoses around the corner and to flow water from outside. And since the door actually faced the front of the structure, the water was mainly being directed towards the front of the basement area below the offices. In other words, being directed towards the east side. Water couldn't be flowed towards the CD corner and the D side of the basement, which is where they were feeling the heat upstairs, was in the back side of the building on the Charlie side. Man, this just goes on, Paul.
It's so similar though to the Warwickshire incident, which was a year before in the UK. Very, very similar. And also to the Bowling, Texas, which was that chicken processing plant or something. Again, they got in the big warehouse, confused, lost, didn't estimate conditions correctly. It's so many similarities to these warehouse fires.
Yeah. But anyway. if you're following along, they started out in offensive mode, then they went to defensive, but then they put people inside and now they're wondering if they should go offensive, but they already have people inside. So anyway, 41 minutes into the call, the ISO radios IC that he's talked with the Quint 1 Rescue 1 captains, and they're in agreement that the roof over the office should be reevaluated in order to resume ventilation, in order to vent the office to release smoke and heat buildup from the inside. So instead of opening the roof, they've opened windows and doors for ventilation. And there's consequences for doing that. We all know that. We've been at these fires. You got a flat roof building, right? So the sensible thing is to open the roof and get the stuff going that way. But they never finished that job. Do you remember? Because the fire was coming out the window and impacting the Quint ladder that was over the window. Just to remind you. So another 8 minutes later, Quint 2 pulls the second 2.5 line from Quint 1 and had it positioned at the basement door on the D side for entry into the basement. So this would be like a backup line. They were unable to enter the basement because the opposing hose streams from Rescue 1 crew, who was on the other side of the basement, were firing water at them. Anyway, a few minutes later, the operations chief synchronized Quint 2 and Rescue 1 hose line operations so that both crews could operate inside the basement. 51 minutes after the time of call, the IC and the ISO discussed over the radio that they believed the fire was contained to the office area of the structure with no extension into the rest of the facility. They discussed that the fire was deep-seated and difficult to extinguish, but they believed they had it contained. So they're of the mindset that it's contained to the office building now.
I'll do some as we tire out doing this long operation. 55 minutes after time of call, Incident Command assigned Mutual Aid Department Station 45 to report to the Bravo side with their engine to initiate Class A foam operations in the basement. So they think they got it contained to the office building. We're going to try to put some foam in there and see if we can knock that fire down that is stubborn. They've got at least 2, maybe 3 65 mil lines fighting it, and they're not winning. Plus stuff on the top on the first floor. After tying off the Quint 4 captain Rick Barkley's rope line at the front entrance of the office area, Quint 1 crew re-entered the front door and advanced down the hallway. They met Quint 4 captain, who was coming in from the Charlie side, near the end of the hallway, Rick Barkley, and discussed interior conditions. So these guys they're getting together. They're talking in the first floor of the office building. They discussed the possibility of venting the roof overhead to release the smoke and heat that was building up inside the office area. The floor was beginning to feel spongy. They could hear fire suppression operations going on in the basement beneath them, and they could feel water streams hitting the floor beneath their feet. Quint 4 Captain Rick Barkley radioed IC and reported the interior conditions. Command instructed them to start backing out. Quint 4 Rick Barkley, captain, told his crew and Quint 4, which was Quint 4 and Squad 1 firefighters, they had returned from changing their air cylinders, remember, out the way that they had entered, following their 65 or 2.5-inch line. While Quint 1 crew returned to the front entrance of the office space, Quint 4 crew backed out into the warehouse from that Charlie side.
So in the 1960s, you would have used high-X foam in the basement where you couldn't get to the fire. So the floor's getting soft. They can't get to the fire in the basement. Where's their Bresnan distributor?
Yeah, or a cockcloth nozzle or anything like that. But I agree. High X foam in the basement would be a tactic for this building, maybe, although you already had fire coming through into the first floor. And I still believe in foam generators, but there are a few fire departments around have them.
Not many.
Not many, a few.
Not many. But this is begging for a distributor drop down through the floor. You know, a big Bresnan distributor that's going to pump 400 or 500 US gallons a minute of water.
Something's blocking them somehow, right?
Yeah. So they're not getting to the now. So this building's ordinary construction. What does that mean? It's masonry walls. Yeah. And inside of those masonry walls, there's a wooden structure built, right?
Yeah.
So your joists are sitting in the pockets, but basically your walls on the inside are wood, and there's probably no fire stopping, so your fire can easily travel up through void spaces. And this building was built in the 50s. So you had 50 years of, messing around with the building, creating holes or HVAC ducts or whatever.
Let's make it clear. There's no one in the building except the firefighters.
That's right. The only risk in the building.
The smoke in the accounting area was getting noticeably thicker. They had to crawl on their hands and knees until they backed out the doorway and made the turn into the warehouse. This is crew at Quint 4 and the guys from Squad 1. Then they were able to stand upright. They left their hose line in the office area hallway and a large amount of hose line slack in the door to the accounting area. 1 hour and 9 minutes after time of call, the incident safety officer attempted to contact the Quint 1 crew inside the office area. That's the guys that had gone in through the front, right, through the office side. Radio transmission was garbled and no response was heard. The RIT 1 team was activated to find the Quint 1 crew. Shortly after entering the office area, the Quint 1 crew was found, and RIT Team 1 radioed IC that Quint 1 was okay. The IC radioed the ISO to pull everyone out of the structure and for all command officers to report to the command post to reassess fireground conditions, which is good. I mean, they're in there an hour. Let's have a meeting here, or which way do we want to go? Time out, basically.
But they're starting to have radio problems.
Right. 1 hour and 11 minutes after time of call, IC called code red to signal all firefighters to exit the structure. Roof ventilation operations were continued, which is odd. You get everybody out of the structure, but you still got guys on the roof, but they want to make that hole to get the glasses out, I guess. 1 hour and 15 minutes after time of call, Station 45, Mutual Aid Department was positioned near the basement door on the Bravo side, that famous initial attack door. Water supplies was established from Quint 2 using a 65 mil hose or 2.5-inch hose with a fog nozzle that had previously been deployed to the basement door as a supply line to the Station 45 engine. Oh, so they took that line that was going inside, put it into the engine. Rescue 2 and Station 45 crews entered the basement through that Bravo side door and began foam operations. Offensive interior tactics to extinguish the fire were resumed, but not formally announced over the radio. So this is a note from NIOSH. So here we had guys going interior just after we had a code red 6 minutes earlier, 4 minutes earlier.
So I wonder if the mutual aid crew was on their channel.
Maybe a different channel. Yeah, that's what I was just thinking, the same thing.
They may not have been back too. Yeah.
Crews again entered the basement through the D side, Delta side door. The visibility was limited in the basement and heat was beginning to build up. The Quint 4 and Squad 1 crews, including the 2 victims, were assigned to relieve the Quint 2 crew in the basement, so they proceeded to the office area where the captain remembered he'd left the tick. When he remembered that he'd left the tick at the rehab area where they had changed out their air cylinders, so the Quint 4 firefighter went back to retrieve the tick. The captain and 2 firefighters from Squad 1 followed the hose line to a door on the Delta side of the office area that led into the basement. They were unable to make entry into the basement because the nozzle on the 2.5-inch 65 mil line was inaccessible. The Quint 4 captain, Rick Bartley, directed his crew to pull 1 3/4 45 mil hand line from Quint 1 to that basement doorway, Delta side basement doorway. These are the guys that were in the warehouse that went into the back, right? Now they're down at the basement on the Delta side. An hour and 26 minutes after time of call, the fire flared up in the office area and was visible from the outside through the Bravo side office windows. Following discussions about opening the office area floor to release the smoke and heat from the basement, the ops section chief radioed command that the crews were again pulling out and going defensive. Moments later, Incident Command radioed the Incident Safety Officer to activate the RIT team to make sure everyone was outside and conduct a PAR. The order to go defensive was given before the Quint 4 Squad 1 crew could place that 1 3/4 hose line into operation going into the basement, which the guys on the other side were going to foam, but we're going to put a water line in the other side. So, and water and foam typically don't mix that well.
Right. So something to note here, right? I mean, they responded with an initial crew of 20, right? So they had, 2 mutual aid trucks come in, another
so they got like 28,
6,
maybe
8, maybe 30.
30.
And they've been slugging it out for an hour and a half.
They're all tired.
They got crews in here, and then they're out of there, and they're back in here, and they're out of there, and they're over in here. These guys have got to be beat. Some of them are on their 3rd bottle, of air, maybe 4th. I don't know, but this is a real danger of limited staffing. Like you should have had another 30, 40 guys standing there to rotate them in and out of, and you would have if it had been a big city department.
Yeah,
but these guys are skinny staffing, and it's dangerous.
And when you're thinking about that, you're dragging 2.5-inch lines or 65 millimeter lines, and some are charged, and that's 10 pounds a gallon. And the one crew tried with 2 guys, and they couldn't do it. That's why they pulled the 1 3/4 line, the 45 mil line. So you're dragging heavy lines in high heat conditions. The heat exhaustion's it's got to be a real danger.
And the humidity was 80%?
Yeah.
And raining, so you're wet. Right. You're soaking wet inside and out. You're exhausted, and you're hot, and you're going to have heat buildup. So it's a wonder nobody went down from like a
just
overheat
medical.
Medical.
Moments later, command radioed the ISO to put Quint 1 and Quint 2 master streams in operation. So he's had enough. It's like no more playing around here. Let's get some master streams into operation. The operation chief radioed the roof ventilation crew that was still in the process of removing their tools from the roof. Command officers were again summoned to the command post for a face-to-face meeting to update the incident action plan to review the facility's pre-plan information, including the location of firewalls and doors, because now they're going to be critical, right? The command staff and the building owner. Note from NIOSH investigators, a number of garbled radio communications are recorded on the Fireground radio audio recordings from approximately 8:25 hours, so that's like an hour and 10 minutes, 15 minutes after the call, to 8:45. These garbled radio communications appear to impact Fireground communications. 1 hour and 38 minutes after time of call, Command Radio's Division C, which was Charlie, discussed the fire commissions on the Charlie side, warehouse side, right? The IC stated that the main focus was to be defensive, and Quint 4 was going to be the exposure truck to keep the fire out of the warehouse. The foam operation in the basement was shut down. Quint 1 and Quint 2 were repositioned for master stream operations over the office area on the Alpha side. Command radioed Ops Section Chief to have another aerial ladder set up at the Charlie side. Ladder 64 in staging was designated to move to the Charlie side for master stream operations. After returning to rehab, the Quint 4 captain discussed the fire suppression activities with the Ops Section Chief. They discussed the need to contain the fire into the office and protect the rest of the structure from the spread. It was decided that Quint 4 crew would return to the warehouse area, protect that masonry wall dividing the office area from the warehouse area. Quint 4 Captain Barkley had everyone check their SCBA air cylinders, determined that everybody had at least 4,000 psi. The crew returned to the loading dock and followed the 2.5 65 mil line that they had previously left inside the warehouse. They followed the hose line to the office door that turned left into the hallway. At this point, there was a lot of thick gray smoke, but not a lot of heat in the office hallway. As they crawled down the hallway, they began to encounter heat on their left. Captain Barkley instructed Victor Eisler to pull the hose line back so they could reach the nozzle. Because remember, they'd left it down the hallways quite a ways, as he didn't want the crew to advance any further. Captain Barkley opened the nozzle and flowed water into the office to their left and gave the nozzle to firefighter Eisler, while he used a thermometer to scan for the seat of the fire. At this point, he could not detect any fire, and water from their hose line was dripping from the ceiling down onto them, indicating that there might not be any fire overhead as the water was not evaporating or turning into steam. An hour and 48 minutes after time of call, the Ops Section Chief attempted to radio Quint 4 Captain Barkley inside the office area multiple times without receiving any response. The Quint 2 engineer observed heavy fire blowing out the Bravo side window of the office and radioed command. An hour and 52 minutes after time of call, the incident safety officer attempted to radio Quint 4 Captain again without receiving a response. The incident safety officer radioed command that the RIT team was being activated to locate Quint 4 Squad 1 crew. The Quint 4 firefighter ran low on air and had to follow the hose line through the warehouse to the outside. At this point, Captain Barkley heard someone attempting to radio him, but the message was unintelligible. The Captain Barkley turned to Victor Eisler and asked him to send Justin Firefighter Monroe to outside to tell the incident safety officer Quint 4 crew was okay. The Quint 4 Captain Barkley and Firefighter Eisler pulled the hose line back to the warehouse doorway, and as the conditions were deteriorating in that office accounting area with thickening dark smoke and increased heat. There's a note here that says, Quint 4 Captain reported attempting to radio outside for crew's assistance in pulling back the 2.5-inch hose line, but the request was not received or understood.
When the Quint 4 firefighter reached the outside, the ISO told him he needed to tell the captain to answer the radio. The Squad 1 firefighter, Monroe, also followed the hose line to the loading dock where he talked with the ISO about the interior conditions and location of the crew. Shortly after that, Quint 4 Captain Barkley heard a radio transmission telling the RIT team to stand down because Quint 4 was okay. So Captain Barkley knew that Justin Monroe made it safely outside. At approximately 0900 hours, the ISO radioed the IC to tell him that he had face-to-face contact with one of the Quint 4 crew and that the crew was experiencing radio problems, but they were okay. So just a reminder here, there's a note again that there was multiple garbled radio transmission communications during this time. Unsure maybe what the cause of that is. And just communication was just terrible at this time. There was a good 20-minute window there. It was just not working. So after talking with the ISO, Firefighter Monroe re-entered the warehouse to rejoin his crew. Now, this was the last known location of Justin Monroe, and the investigation was unable to identify any information on his path back into the warehouse. Soon after that, Quint 4 firefighter re-entered the warehouse following the 2.5-inch hose line. The ISO told the Quint firefighter to tell Captain Barkley that the fire was starting to work its way overhead. 1 hour and 57 minutes after the time of call, the crew operating in the basement radioed that they were going to lose the stairwell to the warehouse if they did not get water. So just a note here, water to the 2.5-inch hose lines deployed to the basement was shut down while Quint 1 and Quint 2 were repositioned for master stream operations. After the apparatus were repositioned, it is possible that not all the hose lines were immediately charged. So we had firefighters inside in the basement with uncharged hose lines during this reposition.
No, I think the firefighters were out. I think the firefighters were out, but they weren't applying water anymore, which is the water
so that's why
to
they
the
were
basement was holding it back. And then when they stopped applying water to change to defensive for the office part, then the fire in the basement flared up because there was no more water being applied.
Right. So that's one of the downsides of having a Quint, where the Quint is your pumper and it's pumping water, and it wasn't set up in the right location to be used as an aerial. So they had to shut it down, reposition it so they could use it as an aerial, reconnect the hoses, and recharge the hoses.
You win that one.
So that's one downside.
The first, how you set up in the first 5 minutes will make your next 5 hours really either easy or a little bit tougher, right?
Exactly. And one thing I wanted to mention here too, Denis had mentioned we're getting all these radio issues, and the call came in at 7:05. We don't know if they had the batteries from the night shift in their radios or the batteries for the day shift in their radios. So if it was night shift batteries, they might be getting tired, cold, and damp. And therefore, that might be a cause for some radio issues. So these stupid little things that did you get a fresh battery? Is it the end of your shift? That's the problem. Just like the people, the radios might be getting down on charge.
Yeah. Round
That
about
all adds up.
Yeah. We'll talk more about radios when we get to the recommendations.
Okay.
Soon after this radio transmission, the stairwell began to collapse, driving the hose line crew out of the basement. So they were in the basement. So right after that, they were driven out of the basement. Soon after hearing the radio transmission for the RIT team to stand down, Captain Barkley heard firefighter Eisler yell that the fire was breaking out overhead. Almost immediately, firefighter Eisler yelled that the fire was all around them. Captain Barkley attempted to radio Mayday, but he was not able to transmit outside. So a NIOSH note here is a review of the fireground audio transcript showed that a number of unintelligible radio transmissions during the time period from 0900 to 0915 hours. Also, a number of firefighters interviewed by the NIOSH investigators reported observing fire race from one end of the structure to the other side. So from the Bravo side to the Delta side in a matter of seconds at about the same time frame. Others reported thickening, dense black smoke building up inside the warehouse area. The collapsing stairwell likely pushed ignition sources into the smoke-filled warehouse, resulting in a rapid fire progression throughout the rest of the structure.
In the description earlier, they talked that there were actually 2 doors from the office area into the warehouse. So there was one of them at the accounting level office, which is the main level, right? So the central hallway ran from the Alpha side door all the way to the back and out to Charlie's side and into the warehouse, right? That's where Captain Barkley and his crew were in. But it would appear that there was also a set of stairs and another door from the basement into the warehouse. And if the basement was being used as a break room, that makes a lot of sense, where guys would come in off the floor, go down the stairs, and go into the break room. So you had 2 major areas of weakness in that wall. So even if it was a firewall, a good firewall, you had 2 areas where you had major areas of weakness. You had, the first level door and the basement level door, or a stairwell that came up to an upper level door, but was in the basement. So you could see where there could easily be gaps where the fire could get up through there. So, and interestingly, this all happened shortly after they lost the water supply because they were repositioning the quint, and they lost the stairwell as a consequence.
Captain Barkley talked to Victor Eisler to reassure him and attempted to pull some slack in the hose back to their position in the warehouse so they could use the nozzle to protect themselves. The captain told Eisler to follow the hose line out and he would follow behind. After going some distance, firefighter Eisler told Captain Barkley he thought they were going the wrong way. They reversed direction and the captain followed Eisler back to the nozzle. Captain Barkley then told Eisler to stay in contact with him and the captain would lead the way out. The captain again attempted to radio Mayday, but could not tell if anyone heard him or not. The captain and firefighter Eisler followed the hose line to the loops, the slack hose, and at this point, the heat inside the warehouse was beginning to become unbearable. Captain Barkley told firefighter Eisler to stay calm while he sorted out the loops in the hose line. The captain did not observe the other 2 crew members in the area at this point. During this time period, Quint 4 firefighter reported he was only able to follow the hose line a short distance into the warehouse before intense heat forced him to turn around and exit the warehouse. The Quint 4 firefighter attempted to radio his captain, but was unable to make contact. The Quint 4 firefighter reported feeling intense heat on his left side as he tried to enter following the hose line and feeling intense heat on his right side after turning around. Captain Barkley yelled for...
So I was to say, remember I mentioned earlier about training and following hose lines, right? So we used to drill on that quite a bit because it's so important, right? And it's you don't just stretch the hose line across the apparatus floor in a straight line and follow it. You got to make it complicated, right? And you've got to make it confusing and see if the guys with a blacked out mask can follow their way through, because and as we talked about in our last episode with with Lionel about training has got to be done under stress, right, for it to be effective. And you need to create that stressful situation. So clearly, the firefighter is in a lot of stress. He's concerned about the fire around him. He's been, already changed his bottle a couple times. He's an hour and a half. He's a young guy. He doesn't have a lot of experience. He's with an experienced captain, but their crew's been split. They got the Quint 4 firefighters been back and forth a couple times. Firefighter Monroe at this time has gone back to the door to try to contact somebody to say that the team is okay. So there's just the captain and Eisler who are back basically at the fire. The Quint 4 firefighter is out at the doors, can't get back because of the heat. And Monroe, we don't know where he is. He set off to go back and is never seen again. So you've got crew integrity is lost. You've got training breaking down, possibly because it wasn't adequate enough for an inexperienced firefighter. And you've got one guy basically who's steady in all of this, and that's the captain, right? So it's up to him to save the day, basically.
Yeah, and the captain's called for Mayday, and no response. So that's got to put a little extra pressure on you. But Captain Barkley yelled for Victor Eisler to follow him, but did not get an answer. He yelled again and also attempted to radio Mayday again. Captain Barkley observed an orange glow all around him and felt intense heat as he began to crawl along the hose line. He was not sure whether firefighter Eisler was following him at this point or not. The captain crawled along the hose line until he came to where the hose line was leaking, which is about 30 feet from the loading dock door. He laid down on the leaking line in an attempt to cool off and rolled over in an attempt to allow the leaking water to cool his back. He again attempted to radio another Mayday and heard a radio transmission deploying RIT into the warehouse. NIOSH notes that during this time frame, several firefighters working outside the structure reported seeing the fire race through the structure, fully engulfing the structure in a matter of seconds.
So a learning point here is if I can't radio out and I have a Mayday inside a building, I have an SCBA on, what can I do to try to get help?
Turn your pass on.
Turn your pass on, one button. It may even, if they're sophisticated enough, ring an alarm in the command truck, maybe. But at least they might hear it. So another thing, but he probably never thought of it. He's been there for an hour and a half, and he just lost two of his firefighters. So obviously,
and we don't know that these radios were equipped with a man down alarm on them. The orange button on the mic, because there'd be people that say, well, if you couldn't transmit out, that wouldn't have worked either. But in fact, that will work where voice won't. Because it's a data transmission, very short.
It might, yeah.
Where
absolutely.
Voice transmission is not. So generally they will work. So we don't know if they were equipped that way, and if they were trained that way, and whether anybody could even answer it. Because it takes us.
Turn your pass on, but we're always taught to use the radio with the pass off so they can understand you.
Yeah, and crew integrity is so important here. Like firefighter Eisler, he thought they were going the wrong way. The captain says, "No, follow me." But he might have still thought, no, the captain's crazy. He's going the wrong way, and continued into the fire. So
yeah. Which we saw that in the English in Warwickshire, where firefighters just kind of wandered off from exhaustion, heat poisoning, carbon
we've
monoxide,
talked about this
whatever,
before,
heat stress,
where heat starts to affect your brain and your decision-making processes, and can really scramble that. So, unless you got your hand wrapped around the guy's harness so he can't get away on
you,
you can't guarantee integrity of your crew.
Yeah.
This is a little bit repetitive, Paul, but it focuses on this aspect.
A little bit, but the RIT team activities, the neighboring combination fire department, Department 62, had a standing mutual aid agreement or automatic aid agreement with the municipal fire department to provide rapid intervention team support at confirmed working fires within the city's jurisdiction. I love it. They've got a run card. It's a working fire. The mutual aid department is automatically responded to provide RIT. That is awesome. The department, too bad Doug's not here. I could get into that with him. This department also provided mutual aid RIT support to a number of other surrounding fire departments. So they had a specialization, which is awesome. A four-person crew, including the chief of the volunteer department 62, responded to the structure fire. While en route, they were told by the municipal fire chief to report to the alpha side of the structure. They also had been dispatched to the second
Should
alarm,
have.
but were not
You
due
need
to
to
an
do that again,
oversight.
yeah.
Sorry, let me start that again. A dog barked too, so she might bark. The kids are coming home from school. A 4-person crew, including the chief of the Volunteer Department 62, responded to the structure fire. While en route, they were told by the municipal fire chief to report to the alpha side of the structure. They should have been dispatched on the second alarm, but they were not, due to an oversight. Another mutual aid department was designated RIT 1 team. Once on scene, Department 62 crew was designated RIT 2 and was assigned to the Alpha sector, while RIT Team 1 was reassigned to the Charlie sector. The chief of the Department 62, RIT 2 chief, walked to the Bravo side office area and sized up the structure and fire conditions. He walked back around the Alpha side to the Delta side of the office area and observed the basement door at the Alpha Delta corner, where the office connected to the warehouse and production area was locked, and the glass window in the door was safety glass reinforced with wire mesh inside the glass. He reported to the municipal fire chief that RIT 2 team was advised to go ahead and force open that door in case it was needed for entry or egress later. After forcing open the door and the 2 adjoining windows, RIT Team 2 continued their size up and observed the 2.5-inch 65 mil hose line being used by the Quint 4 crew running through the loading dock door. One of the RIT 2 team members placed a metal garbage can under the open roll-up door to keep the doorway open in case the door should come down. And that is so awesome. That is a great little skill. If that's the only thing you learn out of this podcast, if you go through a metal roll-up door,
What
or
would be
garage door
even
of any
better
kind,
is if you
block it
carried
open.
door blocking devices in your bunker gear that you could put in the tracks of the door or the chains that held the door at man height instead of 2 feet off the ground. You need to be prepared.
Yeah, that would work too.
You need to be prepared for these things. It's part of, I would say this is a RIT skill that
That's
would be
true.
part of your,
That's true.
I mean, it should be your forcible entry ladder company skill, but anyway.
But you should have wedges in your RIT kit. The RIT 2 team returned to their staging area in front of the structure. Here's a note from NIOSH. The windows and door forced open by the RIT 2 team provided an open path for fire to penetrate the common wall between the office and the warehouse area. This provided a potential path for the fire to advance into the warehouse and production areas.
Softening a building should not automatically mean ventilating a building. And if you force a door,
Oh, yes, exactly.
You should close it afterwards. I mean, you should
Close it.
You should have wedges or rubber straps. We used to use rubber straps, inner tube, just cut with a couple holes, and you could put them over the latching device to hold the door unlatched. It's a skill, but you need to anticipate that you're there to soften. You're not there to ventilate. It's a different function, and unless the IC intends you to ventilate, you should be aware that is not your function.
2 hours and 1 minute from time of call, the RIT Team 2 heard a Mayday broadcast over the radio. The RIT team immediately proceeded to Quint 4 and then to the loading dock again, and they met with the ISO, Incident Safety Officer. They observed the Quint 4 firefighter who had just exited the warehouse due to extreme heat at the loading dock. Remember, he went in, he couldn't get in, he turned around and came out. The RIT 2 team asked for another hose line to protect the RIT team, good idea, and another crew to open the loading dock door. There's a note from NIOSH. By this time, the warehouse was full of fire, and visibility was reported still good inside the warehouse because it's such a massive building, right? The heat and fire had caused the roll-up door at the loading dock to drop, which was now supported by the metal garbage can, leaving about 2 feet of space under the door.
How did the door drop?
Denise going to lose it.
Well, probably not the chain,
but
probably the springs. So, the doors are held up by springs, and you've got that much heat in the top third of the warehouse that your steel springs have lost tension and the door comes down. And this can happen in a residential garage door where the mechanism can burn off because it's very lightweight. But it can also happen in industrial doors. It can happen in chain-up doors, automated doors. So this is why it's so important to block those doors. But it's also an indication that there's problems in the building, right? Huge heat levels.
Yeah. Well, they said it was full of fire. Two members of the RIT Team 2 immediately entered the warehouse by crawling under the loading dock door. They observed stacks of 4x8 foot laminated sheeting on the left of the loading dock door that were burning freely on top. They reported high heat, but it was not unbearable, so they continued to advance along the hose line. The warehouse interior began to get darker and visibility decreased as they advanced into the warehouse. The RIT number 2 chief and the other RIT team member waited a short time for the backup hose line to get set up, but one was not brought to the loading dock, so the RIT 2 chief crawled under the door into the warehouse. The first 2 RIT 2 team members heard a pass device sounding in front of them just after passing the stacks of burning laminate sheeting. They soon encountered the Quint 4 Captain Barkley lying on the leaking hose line. They also heard two other pass devices sounding further inside the warehouse. One RIT Team 2 member, RIT Captain 1, immediately began dragging the Quint 4 Captain Barkley outside, while the other RIT 2 team member advanced along the hose line into the direction of the other sounding pass devices. RIT Captain 2 had advanced only a few feet in the structure when the structure was rocked by an explosion and let the heat inside the warehouse immediately intensified. He turned around, followed the hose line back, helped RIT Captain 1 drag the injured Quint 4 Captain Barkley outside. About the same time, the municipal fire chief came to the loading dock and ordered everyone outside. RIT 2 team was able to get Quint 4 Captain Barkley under the loading dock door and then crawled under themselves. As they assisted in getting the Quint 4 Captain off the loading dock, they relayed information about hearing other pass devices. Both RIT Team Captain 1 and Captain 2 suffered burn injuries from their hands and head, and so they were sent back to staging for medical attention. The RIT 2 team chief also injured when he rolled under the door and then rolled off the loading dock, dropping to the ground. Rescue 1 crew, captain, engineer, and firefighter were sent inside to search for the 2 missing firefighters. They advanced along the hose line to the point where the hose was leaking, where Captain Barkley had been found, but were driven back by intense heat and fire conditions in the warehouse. 2 additional attempts were made to follow the hose line back to the warehouse. Both attempts were stopped by the intense heat and fire conditions. Rescuers reported that water was accumulating on the warehouse floor was near boiling hot. One last attempt was made by 2 municipal firefighters, off-duty captains, so they were career firefighters, who were sent inside to search for the missing firefighters. They encountered intense heat as they followed the 2.5-inch hose line inside the warehouse area. When they came to the area where the hose line was leaking, they could hear a pass device ahead and to the right. They advanced a short distance further and encountered firefighter Eisler, lying face down. Firefighter Eisler was dragged by his SCBA shoulder straps back to the loading dock, about 40 feet, 12 meters, and taken outside. At this point, the smoke in the warehouse was beginning to clear out and visibility began to improve. The fire was burning freely throughout the warehouse and debris was falling from the overhead. Firefighter Eisler was transported by ambulance to the local trauma center but died shortly thereafter. Due to deteriorating conditions, rescue attempts were halted. Hose lines were put in operation to protect the location where firefighter Monroe was believed to be. Firefighter Monroe was located and removed at approximately 9:45 hours. Firefighter Monroe was transported to the local trauma center where he was pronounced dead. Wow. Of course, those Quints would have done nice master streams through that loading dock door into the warehouse.
Surprised nobody thought of that.
I always think of that, but
yeah. Well, you're not going to get it through you could get it through a 2-foot space, but still, it doesn't look like
push it through a door. It's a ladder. It's hydraulic. It'll push through a wall.
But even a blitz fire on a 2.5, or stick it in there and just
not as much as 1,000 gallons from a aerial,
but I'm beginning to wonder how good their water supply was. Anyways, these extreme long layouts. I mean.
And some aggressive fire departments will specify that their aerial monitors can aim up.
Oh, yeah.
So you can put the ladder out flat and aim up into the ceiling space.
Yep.
Not all aerials can do it,
yep.
but some can.
Yep.
Same with platforms, right, to get more water in there to try to save that space.
Yeah.
But They'd run out of time, and they were all tired by this time.
Yeah.
They weren't thinking they're 2 hours into
No.
a major fire.
No. I mean, I saved an entire mall that way one time.
Yeah.
But it's, yeah, these guys are overwhelmed.
That was a Miami-Dade spec.
Yeah.
Well, the aerial monitor must be able to flow upwards.
Yeah. Too much fire, too few people.
Yep. Recommendations. Wow, this is a long one. Recommendation 1, fire department should ensure detailed pre-incident plan information is collected and available when needed, especially in high-risk structures. This is definitely a high-risk structure. In this incident, arriving crews concentrated on the Alpha and Bravo sides of the structure. The incident commander arrived on scene, assumed command, established stationary command post, obtained interior condition reports from company officers, designated sector officers, and an ops section chief, which was awesome early in the incident. That's all good. Pre-planned information was available and utilized by the fire department early in the incident as well. However, the pre-planned form did not contain detailed construction information or an accurate floor plan of the facility. Attempts were made to contain the fire to the office area, but the deep-seated fire proved difficult to extinguish and the seat of the fire could not be reached. Masonry walls dividing the office area and separating the office area from the rest of the facility were thought to be firewalls, although in 1959, when it was built, they might not be, and efforts were made to protect these walls. However, firewalls and accurate locations of openings were not clearly identified in the pre-planned drawing. Now, I would have put a blitz fire at that office door from the Charlie into the office on the second floor.
Which one?
And the basement one, too. Both of them.
Yeah. I suspect it's the basement door is where the fire, got through and was spewing heat and combustibles into the warehouse.
Into a highly flammable warehouse full of dust and millwork products.
And eventually
and wood. And
eventually ignited, and eventually they had a smoke explosion.
Yeah, exactly.
Recommendation 2. Fire departments should limit interior offensive operations in well-involved structures that are not equipped with sprinkler systems and where there are no known civilians in need of rescue. So in this incident, firefighters were on scene and engaged in fire suppression operations from 0710 to 0906 hours, so darn near 2 hours, prior to the first confirmed Mayday transmission. Fire suppression tactics were switched from offensive to defensive and back again to offensive several times. Life safety of civilians was not a consideration in determining what strategy to use as firefighters were not searching for occupants within the structure, and the fire department conducted regular personal accountability reports to account for all firefighters on scene. So the life risk in this incident was the firefighters themselves. As noted earlier, fires in commercial structures are typically more dangerous than residential building fires. Where there is no clear danger to civilians, the first priority of firefighting should be the protection of firefighters' lives, and when no other person's life is in danger, the life of the firefighter has a higher priority than fire containment or property consideration. In this incident, there were no indications of civilians in danger inside the commercial structure that was not required to be equipped with a sprinkler system. And candidly, I would comment, and I know this may not be popular, but the insurance company didn't care, obviously, about this business enough to sprinkler it and to ensure there were functioning firewalls. And the owners didn't either. Wasn't worth the money to them to sprinkler and protect their facility. So why is it the firefighters' responsibility to do what the owners and the insurers don't care about? Like,
yeah, I mean,
you're protecting jobs. I get that, but like you're hours into this incident making no progress, man.
Yeah, we're there to, serve the community by protecting the properties so that business goes on and the economy and all that kind of stuff. But at a certain point, we have to say, hang on, this isn't working. The same thing happened in Bowling, Texas. The same thing happened in Warwickshire. So many of these commercial buildings that we've done where, like, guys, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't kill yourselves over it.
Or change tactics and go fully defensive. I mean, cut a hole in the wall, stick your stick in there, and let go with large water streams. And we don't know that they actually had the ability for large streams.
We don't know what the water was.
You're talking 1,200-foot layouts on a 5-inch line. I've pumped those lines, and you even pumping them, you can't get more than 1,000 out the other end tops.
Yeah,
it's just too long. So why? Wow, it's a killer to read this stuff.
It is. For our listeners, Dennis had audio issues, technical issues, so it's just Denis and I are going to finish this up. Recommendation number 3, fire departments should develop, implement, and enforce clear procedures for operational modes. Changes in modes must be coordinated with incident command, the command staff, and the firefighters. Fire departments, the discussion was you have to have clear, well-established procedures for different operational modes. And this was really confusing on this incident because they changed back and forth and it was never set in stone. While it's recognized that firefighters is dangerous and involves risk versus gain analysis is also known as risk benefit, is one of the most useful tools incident command has for reducing overall risk to firefighters during an incident, thus enhancing their overall safety. During this incident, operational mode was changed from offensive to defensive and back to offensive several times, including changes made just minutes apart. In some instances, whenever actions were taken to switch the fireground operations to defensive mode, various units requested to remain in an offensive mode. That's crazy. Different units in different modes. There were also instances which orders to withdraw from the structure were not communicated to all units or coordinated with the operations chief. It was really odd how they viewed the property as two separate properties. Defensive in the office, but offensive in the front part. Anyway,
Well,
sorry about Molly.
that's what Molly
barking.
thinks too. So
Yeah, Molly's barking in the background because of it's almost 4:00. When Quint 4 and Squad 1 firefighters were trapped by the rapidly deteriorating conditions inside the facility, the intended strategy was to contain the fire to the office area and protect the production and warehouse areas, which is a good strategy. There was no life safety hazard other than firefighters inside the warehouse area, and the fire had been burning for over 2 hours, resulting in substantial damage to the office area. This doesn't include exactly the delayed alarm. We don't know how long the fire had been burning. We know they'd been there for 2 hours.
Recommendation 4, fire departments should ensure that rapid intervention crews, RICs or RITs, have at least one charged hose line in place before entering hazardous environment for rescue operations. Charged hose lines are necessary to provide protection to RIT team members as they initiate search and rescue operations in burning structures. The RIT team must be ready to enter the burning structure at a moment's notice for rescue operations. Remember, there's already a crew inside that's in trouble. At this incident, the RIT 2 team members searched for and rescued the Quint 4 captain, Captain Barkley, without a charged hose line, although they'd asked for one, and were injured in the process. 2 guys burned, 1 guy fell off the ledge. A charged hose line may have potentially facilitated further searching for the other 2 victims prior to retreating, because they had to retreat due to the intense heat and deteriorating conditions. The RIT 2 chief requested a backup hand line before they went in and another crew to open the roll-up door that had dropped down and was resting on the garbage can with only a 2-foot gap under it. The backup hose line was not brought to the loading door. As mentioned above, 2 of the RIT team members suffered burn injuries while removing the Quint 4 captain. It's good practice to pull a backup line when a hose line is put into operation so that the backup line is readily available if needed. Now, the principal line that was in there was a 2.5, a 65 millimeter. Your backup line should be of a similar size, which raises the issue. And more than for this reason, is a 4-person RIT team adequate? The answer is no, it's not.
Yeah.
And particularly in a situation where you're going to save 3 people that are missing, and you're sending in a 3-person RIT team, which is really what
12-person RIT team.
Which is really what they need. So
you're
under-resourced again, and they couldn't get a hose line in place. Was that because there wasn't the water available? They didn't have the hose? Communication was inadequate? We don't know. I'm surprised actually that wasn't explored further, but.
Recommendation 5, fire department should ensure that the incident commander establishes the incident command post in an area that provides good visual view of the fire building and enhances overall fireground communication. The discussion about this is the location of the command post should provide a vantage point to which to view the incident and enhances communication between the incident commander and the firefighting forces. Ideally, the command post location should provide the IC with the ability to observe fire conditions, building conditions, and the progress or lack of progress on containing the fire and extinguishing the fire, changes to smoke, etc. First arriving crews encountered a well-established deep-seated basement fire and initially assessed the basement through a Bravo side basement door, indicating delayed alarm, of course. The incident commander established the command post near the Alpha Delta corner of the 79,000 square foot commercial structure. The location provided a view of the front Alpha side of the structure, but the Bravo side was not visible, where most of the initial offensive operations were taking place. During the incident, heavy dark smoke banked down and covered the incident scene due to changing weather conditions. The smoke severely restricted fireground visibility and forced pump operators to don SCBAs, as it said, interfered with fireground rehab area, and forced RIT team to change staging. The IC's view of the structure was also partially blocked by a tree in front of the loading dock, company vehicles, and a semi-trailer parked at the loading dock, as well as position of Quint 4. If the command post had been staged near the Alpha Bravo corner or further upwind, more comprehensive view of the structure and exposures might have been possible. However, the railroad tracks in front of the industrial park complicated positioning of the command post. And of course, the hose lines started going down. And, although a chainsaw would have fixed the tree maybe, but they didn't have the people to do that. Incident commander stayed in radio contact with the ISO, the operations chief, and the designated sector officers throughout the incident, but had limited visual contact with the large amount of ongoing fire operations. And maybe he should have moved to a pumper or a Quint or something. I've done that. I've gone and sat in another truck that was in a better location.
Yeah.
Noisy. It's got a radio.
Noisy. Yeah. Doesn't have your tools.
Noisy, yeah. I went and hopped into a wildland truck that happened to be on scene. It was perfect because it wasn't fighting a wildland fire, obviously. The changing fire suppression tactics employed as the incident escalated and crews were unable to reach the seat of the fire, along with the lack of visual oversight, may have led to misunderstandings in locations dictating during operational assignments. For example, there were 2 access doors dividing the warehouse from the office area. The door closest to the office area was bypassed, and access to the office was made through the door that was furthest from the loading dock door on that Delta side. When rapidly deteriorating conditions caught Quint 4, Squad 1 crew off guard, they had to further travel during their escape to reach the outside.
So you say the incident commander was in a fixed position, and he couldn't see everything he needed to see. There was apparatus in the way. There was a tree in the way. There was smoke in the way. He was mostly looking at the Alpha Delta corner. And his operations chief was more focused on the Bravo side, right? And the Charlie sector, which is basement sector, really, operations. So I think the assumption is that the incident commander would stay focused on what was going on Alpha Bravo. And the operations chief was thinking more about Bravo Charlie. But yeah. And they make, he says, so the incident commander stayed on the radio, it says, and he was in contact with the ISO, and there was also a safety officer too involved, the operations chief and designated sector officers. I don't know that there were sector officers, actually. There were officers in the different sectors, but I don't remember hearing about sector officers. So I think that would have been helpful, for instance, like in the warehouse itself, there was only Captain Barkley. Like there was nobody really in there, looking at that. I mean, I think there was a safety officer near the loading door, I think, or periodically there was, but there doesn't appear to have been enough supervision in that area where the fatalities occurred. Maybe that's an easy thing to say afterwards, but.
Yeah, big fire, lots of people, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the problem. Yeah, the IC really couldn't see the office portion of the building at all. There was a Quint and a tree and a semi-trailer truck in the way
and
in
smoke.
his line of sight, according to the diagram.
And smoke and rain.
And smoke. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was challenged to do that.
Yeah.
But the advantage is that, like in my command car, for instance, I had binders with informations on the facilities. I had a computer program. I could go in, and it wasn't Google Earth, but it was like it was our city system. I could go in and look at buildings from all sides. I knew distances to exposures. I knew the information, what was in there, values, footages. You knew all that stuff. You could do all of that. If you up and move from your car and become walking around and or sit in a pumper, You've lost all that. So
You lose your stuff.
besides your portable radio, what else do you have? And really, that's Brunacini's point about having a stationary command post is that
Mhm.
you have all the tools there. Get
Right.
somebody else to do the walking and looking for you, and
Right.
you process the information yourself. Anyways,
That's true. It's true. Yep.
anyway, recommendation.
Recommendation 6.
Sorry.
Fire departments should ensure that crew integrity is maintained during fire suppression operations, which we've mentioned many times already. Firefighters should always work and remain in teams whenever they are operating in a hazardous environment. Team continuity means team members knowing who is on their team, who is the team leader, staying within visual contacts at all times if visibility is low. Teams must stay within touch or voice distance of each other if you can't see. Team members communicating needs and observation to the team leader, and team members rotating together to rehabilitation. They sent 2 guys out individually, first one, then another one to get packs, cylinders changed, but they didn't. The first 2 didn't go with them. Staging as a team, watching out for each other, practicing strong buddy system. In this incident, Squad 1 firefighter Monroe was sent outside to relay a message that the Quint 4 Squad 1 leader was okay, since Quint 4 Captain Barkley was experiencing problems with his radio transmitting outside the structure. A safer action of the entire crew exiting the structure to report radio communication problems may have led to a totally different outcome in this incident. Another crew member exited on his own to change his air cylinder. Working alone increases the risk for individuals and possibly to others during search and rescue efforts, which we've talked about.
What happened to the search rope that Captain Barkley left attached to the bench on the loading dock and
Good question.
stretched in with him? It's never mentioned again.
No idea.
It seemed like the obvious way to get back out.
Yeah, they used 2. They had one in the office too on the top floor.
So who was in the middle holding both ends? Anybody?
Yeah. Well, I don't think they met. Well, actually, the crews did meet, but whether the search ropes met.
Well, they
did meet.
They were 50-foot search ropes. Captain Barkley was found 30 feet into the building at the hose company. It was significantly further to the office door.
It's on the ground somewhere.
So it's on the ground or tied off somewhere. So, recommendation 7: fire departments should encourage local building code authorities to adopt fire codes requirements for automatic sprinklers protection, basically systems, including alarms, in buildings with heavy fire loads. The recommendation focuses on fire prevention and minimizing the impact of a fire if one does start. The NFPA Fire Protection Handbook states that throughout history there have been building regulations for preventing fire and for restricting its spread. Over the years, these regulations have evolved into codes and standards developed by committees concerned with fire protection. These codes and suggestions are built on experience, man. They're not just blue sky stuff. The structure involved in this incident was a 1-story commercial structure, well, one with a basement, of ordinary construction with a partial basement containing approximately 79,000 square feet. That would be the warehouse fabricating area, and housed a millwork facility that produced laminated cabinets, moldings, and wood trim products, as we'd said earlier. The contents presented a heavy fire load. However, the structure was built in 1959 after another devastating fire, I might add, actually 2 previous fires, and was not required to have automatic sprinklers at that time. Anyway, like I said earlier, if the insurance company and the business owner don't put sprinklers in their buildings or alarm systems in their buildings, that's a message to the firefighters. This building is not that important to them.
Fire codes are built in blood, not ink and paper. That's where they come from.
Yeah.
Recommendation 8: manufacturers, equipment designers, researchers should continue to define and refine durable, easy-to-use radio systems to enhance verbal and radio communication. During recent testing of portable radios in simulated firefighting condition environments by NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, has identified radios are vulnerable to exposures of elevated temperatures. During this incident, firefighters experienced intermittent radio communication problems, interruptions. Audio transcripts of the fireground channel recorded multiple instances where firefighters inside the structure, including the injured captain, attempted to transmit over the radio, but the transmissions were not heard or not understood. So yeah, we don't know. They recorded 1,043 transmissions, and out of the 1,043, 100 were cut off and 300 were unintelligible. So they had lots. They had 420 radio transmissions on the fireground channel. Were partially or completely unintelligible. So
31%.
yeah.
1 in 3 conversations, you couldn't make out what they were saying.
Now, since 2007, radio stuff has completely changed. Although I'm not sure that it's overall better. If we look at that Southwest or that hotel in Houston where the 8 firefighters died, I think it was, or 4 or 8, radios were a key factor in that as well.
Yeah. I remember in the late 90s, we were transitioning from NICAD batteries because NICAD has a problem with memory, right? If you don't manage it properly and you short cycle it constantly, like you use it for an hour, put it back in the charger, well, pretty soon it's only good for an hour or a little more. We were moving to nickel metal hydride because that did not have a memory. But it turned out, and we learned this the hard way, nickel metal hydride is very sensitive to environmental conditions. When they got cold, they dropped off and stopped performing. Yeah. When they got hot, we had the same issues, and they leaked, as in they lost charge. So you'd have it sitting on your desk, and 2 weeks later, it was flat all by itself.
Yeah.
So
Yep. So radios undercoats with radio belts is a big thing too. It protects the radio.
Yeah.
And using the remote mics, very good. Protect the cord, of course, with your jacket.
Yeah.
Recommendation 9, what was the last one here? Manufacturers, equipment designers, and research should conduct research into refining existing and developing new technologies to track the movement of firefighters inside of structures. Firefighter fatalities are often the result of firefighters becoming lost or disoriented on the fireground. The use of systems for locating and disoriented firefighters could be instrumental in reducing the number of firefighter deaths on the fireground. MSA was working on this way back when I was still selling equipment before 2005. They had all kinds of tracking systems. They were trying to figuring out what they call it, breadcrumbs. It would leave breadcrumb trail where they walked. And then Denis just points out here, of course, last episode, number 92, we talked about a new system that's coming out. What was it called again?
3 a.m. It was produced by 3 a.m. Was the company that did it.
And I think MSA has something on their packs now you can buy that is supposed to be functional. So I haven't played with any, so I don't know.
But the ability to track a firefighter in a field in a wildland fire is not the same as the ability to track a firefighter in the third office down a hallway on the second floor of a building. It ain't the same.
Right.
And you know that stuff where they go Mission Impossible and stuff, and they're sitting there watching the guy go through the building, and there's a guy to your left around the desk on the back corner.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Doesn't exist. Wish it did.
You're right. And the problem now because everybody's going to the 800 megahertz radio trunking systems is they don't work well inside of buildings or underground. So then you have to have a repeater. Well, they're going to tell every major building owner, like Plainfield, that warehouse, the sprinkler warehouse, the radios didn't work in there either because the building's so massive and it's metal and concrete tilt up, is that unless you get the building owners to install a repeater in case of emergencies, that's not going to happen.
That was a factor at 9/11 in the Twin Towers when they're using a new digital system. And I think they went backwards after that.
I'm not sure. Anyway, we drone on.
Anyway, another episode of very tragic outcome. Lots to learn, we did. It was a long episode, and I'm sorry. There's a lot of firefighting descriptions. The main thing to take away from this is these guys were at this for a long time, and yet still, the situation caused them to lose their lives and their actions. And really, you need to learn from these things. You can't experience these things yourself. You've got to learn them where you can. And this is one place to learn. I hope you're listening. Be safe.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast. We hope that you continue to find these interesting and informative. Please honor our fallen brothers by learning and sharing these lessons. And as Sergeant Phil Esterhouse used to say on Hill Street Blues, now let's be careful out there.